Okay, it started.
Thank you. We're still missing Pat Cleary.
Excuse me, Ro and Michael. Our court reporter is asking for a link so they can speak to just confirm information about everyone that they're going to be doing the transcript for.
Or do you have their name?
I just copied you on an email, Ro. Sorry to interrupt. Because we're the first public hearing.
Okay, just give me a second. I have to check the emails now.
I mean, should I share my panelist link or will that mess things up?
I don't think it will, but let's see.
Because I could just do that if that's the easiest.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, I'll just do that. Thank you.
We ready, Ro?
Yes, you're live.
Okay. Welcome everyone to our December planning board meeting. And before we get started, I just want to say happy holidays. Everybody has a great weekend and the following weekend. And the first piece of business that we usually do is we say the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we do that tonight, Ro? No.
Would you like a flag?
It usually kicks us off. We don't have to have one. We can just start it. I'll
So
start it.
Bill, are you able to give us a flag? If not, we can just,
I don't have one currently.
all right.
All right, we'll just go ahead. All right, folks. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a busy night tonight, folks. So we have a lot of public hearings, and we'd like anybody who's going to wants to speak at the public hearing. We're happy to have you speak at the public hearing. Looking forward to hearing you at the public hearing. But we want you to be specific toward that public hearing, if you could. And some of them are like the first one we have is specific to a piece of business that we're dealing with for the public. It's not totally about the whole project, so you may want to be a little more specific in helping us along with those pieces of business we're trying to accomplish.
Excuse me. Hi, I am the court reporter. I don't mean to interrupt anybody, but I need to know.
So what do you want?
We're not up to that item quite yet.
I understand, but I'm going to need, I I see everybody's names, I think.
Well, you know what? You're gonna have to do the best you can. We're gonna move right along. We don't have time to, I'll hold your hand on this.
I
Sorry
can
about
get
that.
Well,
This
you don't
is-
have to hold my hand, sir, but I need to know
Mhm.
who's.
I
Well,
can
you're
get you,
Listen,
I
I'm
can
not gonna
get you
get
the
into it.
information.
I'm not gonna get into a discussion about this. Take care of it. We're
Yes.
moving on, okay?
No problem. I will get you the
Okay.
information.
Yeah, I will
The,
tomorrow.
Committee
I'm-
reports is our first section of the meeting tonight, the agenda. And first item is to
Something that I'm worried about.
talk about the adoption of the minutes from November 23rd. Anybody have any questions, concerns? If not, let's have a motion to adopt the minutes.
Make that motion.
Second,
I don't
Joe-
know
Joe.
how many people are.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hands.
Yes,
Okay. All right. Next item is 3 Westchester Park Drive. Looking for a steep slope permit extension, and a wetland permit extension.
Good evening, everyone. Stephen Rabel from McCullough, Goldberger and Stout. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
I'll be brief. I know it's a long agenda. The project is underway. The building's been demolished and construction has commenced. We're seeking 1-year extensions of steep slope and wetland permit approvals for the work to be completed in those areas. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Anybody on the board have any questions? Had any issues?
No issues, Mr. Chairman. You can do it with a single motion.
Okay. Let's have a motion to grant the extensions for both permits, wetland and steep slope.
I'll move, Chip.
I'll second Noni.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, granted.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on to the main part of the agenda. First item is 27 Westchester Avenue. Now, are you having an issue with your court reporting at this point? Have you cleared that up?
I think we're going to be okay. Thank you, Chairman. I will get her the information as soon as the meeting's over. So
We can
Okay.
help her tomorrow as well.
yeah, she can just follow along with who's speaking based, everyone's got a label pretty much. That
Just a quick question. Does anybody see Marshall?
I thought I saw him.
Did too, but now he's gone.
It's under a different, I think it's under a different name. Maybe.
Marshall, are you here?
Maybe
Okay,
not.
just for the vote. All right.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, shall I proceed?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Don't we miss these Zoom meetings?
Oh, yeah, it's terrific.
Yeah, exactly. Good evening, everyone. My name is Seth Mandelbaum. I'm partner with the law firm of McCullough, Goldberger and Stout. Very pleased to be here this evening on behalf of Senlac Ridge Partners. Peter Farrow is with me from AKRF. Peter, if you could share your screen to start the PowerPoint, that'd be great. Thank you. So I'm just going to quickly give a little background, introduce our team, and then hand it over to a few other members of our team. And we're very aware of the time constraints. So this application, as you may recall, is to demolish the existing building at 2700 Westchester Avenue and create a 69-unit luxury townhome development. There'll be a little more detail about that in a moment. If we can go to the next slide, Peter. So with us from Senlac Ridge Partners, the owner of the property and the applicant is Chris Richter, principal and head of development. And Chris will give you a little bit of background very quickly in a moment. You're also going to primarily hear from Peter Farrow, the planner, senior technical director of planning with AKRF. His firm prepared the draft environmental impact statement, which is the subject of this public hearing. And you're also going to hear from Rob Aiello, professional engineer with JMC Engineering, and Rob will be focusing primarily on stormwater and floodplains and issues such as that. But we're going to take a few moments here, no more than 10 to 15 minutes, just to summarize the project and the DEIS, and then happy to answer any questions the board or the public might have regarding this project. With that, I will hand it over to Chris, and then Peter and Rob. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth, and thank you, Chairman and members of the Planning Board. Good evening. Again, Chris Richter. Real briefly, Sunlight Bridge Partners is a new name. It's essentially the principles of Normandy Real Estate Partners, which have had a decade-long relationship with real estate within the Platinum Mile and Teardrop. We can move to the next slide. So the subject matter tonight, as Seth mentioned, is 2700 Westchester Avenue. That is a sister building to 2500 Westchester Avenue. The two buildings total 288,000 square feet. 2700 is approximately 123,000 square feet. As you see the stats, 2500 is actually doing okay, but 2700 is below 30% occupied right now. And with the market conditions, it's expected to decline. With respect to 2700 specifically, we've always had historically a problem leasing this facility. 2500 is up on the crest of the hill, and if those are the members of the planning board who've been to the site, you take the loop road down to the bottom of the hill, and the back of this building is tucked into the rock slope, limiting the natural light and a major impediment to leasing the building. Big picture on the office market real quickly. Believe it or not, over the last 12 years, over 2 million square feet of office inventory has been demolished. Even with that, the vacancy rate has still spiked from 16.1 to 23.1%. And if you add the subleasing in, that goes up another couple of points. So the office market has not seen any rebound. If anything, it's going in the wrong direction. Next slide. So I think many of you were around when Normandy was involved in the redevelopment of both the Wegmans and Toll Brothers site. This is a model that has been successful. When the Wegmans was developed, 3 buildings, roughly 262,000 square feet of office were removed. And when the Toll Brothers development was developed, 2 office buildings of roughly 164,000 square foot were removed, taking obsolete and underperforming assets and turning them into community assets. I think everyone's familiar with the location. This just puts the 2700 into perspective of location as it relates to the teardrop. So finally, we're taking an underperforming office asset that we feel has a little hope of recovering and turning it into a luxury townhouse community that is highly desirable, and we feel it's going to be a great asset to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Now, Peter Farreau will take you through some of the highlights of the DEIS.
Thanks, Seth. And just to follow up on what Chris said, the site plan being proposed is to retain the 2500 office building and remove the 2700 office building. And in its place would be 69 3-story luxury townhouses, each with a 2-car garage. There would be a significant landscaping program both within the site, internal to the site and external to the site, new shade trees, flowering trees, plantings, wildflower wetland seeding, and really trying to turn this into a more walkable residential type feel with sidewalks, outdoor amenities, spaces, walking trails along the eastern edge of the property. And it's important to note that the development, inclusive of the walking trails, the parking lots and everything, would be outside of the floodplain and outside of wetlands, as is the current site. In order to realize that project, the applicant has proposed a zoning text amendment to the town board, obviously referred to this board as well. And in essence, the zoning text amendment has two pieces. The first is to expand the geographic scope of the existing SBO multifamily use. And this is the special permit use that allows for multifamily within the teardrop currently. And so the proposed zoning text amendments expand that geography to include the balance of the SBO district that has access to Westchester Avenue. The second part of the zoning text amendment adds several pieces that allow for redevelopment of a previously developed site that anticipates leaving an office use on the parcel, as is the case here. So it allows for shared access and frontage, and makes some modifications to the parking ratio for the existing office building to remain if it has currently performed within the parking that it has, which is the case here. Following action on the zoning text amendments, if that is positively adopted by the town board, would be the special exception use permit and site plan permits from the planning board and town board, as well as a few other items having to do with the title and some restrictive covenants that deal with the current site plan. This action has been before the town board and the planning board for quite some time. Back in March, 9 months ago, we submitted the original petition and special exception use permit approximately a month later. We've been before this board several times and taken public comment at the scoping session in July, which the scope outlines what needed to be studied in the draft environmental impact statement, which, as Seth mentioned, is the subject of the hearing tonight. That scope, that table of contents, was approved by this board in July, and the planning board determined that the DEIS that the applicant prepared was complete and ready for public comment in November. So here we are in December, looking forward to the public hearing and comment period. And this is not the end of the process, as many of you know. The applicant and town are required to prepare a final environmental impact statement that goes through and responds to each of the substantive comments that were received on the DEIS. And then the planning board takes a few other procedural steps to conclude seeker, make zoning recommendations. And after all of that, the town board still has to act on the zoning. The planning board still gets to act on the special permit and site plan. So we've been at this for a little while. We still have a little more ways to go. These are the subjects of the DEIS. I won't go through them all because you all either have a copy or have read it, I'm sure, online. But I'll... That's wild.
Oh, if you're not speaking, can you please mute your speakers?
Okay, I think that's better. So I'll hit a couple of the quick highlights in the DEIS now. The proposed project, inclusive of the zoning text and the redevelopment, are consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. That comprehensive plan anticipated that if the redevelopment of the teardrop was successful and market forces still looked for redevelopment of sites, that use would be expanded throughout the SBO. As Chris said, we know the office market is still struggling. We know that regional housing demand is still strong. We know that local housing demand is incredibly strong, and the overall supply remains tight. So these forces are still in play. The DEIS also did several analyses regarding socioeconomics, fiscal impacts, community facilities. Just a couple of the quick highlights. The EIS anticipated a $1.6 million annual increase in property tax revenue with the redevelopment of this site. That's nearly $375,000 annually to the town, over and above what's received now, and approximately $879,000 over and above what the school district receives now. Obviously, there would be some increased incremental demand in police, fire, and EMS services that was analyzed in the DEIS and discussed. And there would be increased demand to the school district. We have a range of anticipated number of children based on a number of different methodologies. The number 10 that's anticipated, this came from a case study of other Westchester communities that have had recent luxury townhouse communities similar to this project. We actually foiled the school districts in those communities and got the enrollment over the past couple of years. And based on those actual data in Westchester as presented in the EIS, we estimated approximately 10 children in the in the 69 units. Looking at more statewide data, both in New York and New Jersey, some more recent, some older, estimated a higher number of school children at 22. Yes, it's a big range, but I think what's important to note is that regardless if it lands at 10 or 22, the school district would still receive a surplus of property tax revenue after accounting for an increase of $23,000 per student to their budget. So after taking into account the costs of the extra students, either 10 to 22, the school district's still receiving an annual surplus. And based on communication received from the school district, the district has the capacity to serve those students. Over the next 10 years, the school district is projecting a net decline of 263 students, and that includes the addition of students from the recently constructed planned approved development. So that already takes that into account. So the school district should be able to both have the capacity and the budget necessary with this project. The EIS also presents a number of visual studies to help orient the community towards what the visual impacts of this project might be, what you might be able to see from various vantage points. I'm going to run through these very quickly because they are in the EIS, but this is a section from Westchester Avenue on the south, which is on the left of the screen, running to the north on the right of the screen. You see the existing 2900 Westchester Avenue building here on the left, and then the townhouses of a much lower scale further to the right, set back. Here's a photo simulation from approximately the same location. You can see the 2900 building in the foreground. You can see the 2700 building in the left-hand photo, barely in the background. And again, with those townhouses proposed of a little bit lower scale and certainly set back behind significant vegetation. This is from the Purchase Professional Park on Westchester Avenue. You're looking north, northwest. Again, existing on the left, proposed on the right. Very difficult to see the townhouses through that existing vegetation, and even harder to see through the new office building that's going to be constructed right in the foreground there. Here's a section running from Brook Lane in Rybrook on the right, up towards the 2500 Westchester office building on the left. And you can see again the scale of the townhouses and the distance between the existing residential neighborhood in Rybrook and the existing office building. Here's a picture, again, existing on the left, proposed conditions on the right. So you have a wooded vegetated buffer in between the existing homes in Rybrook that will be maintained with this project. And then the addition of the residential scaled and product type a few hundred feet away. This is a section from Knightsbridge Manor Road all the way on the left, coming down the hill across the parking lot for the 2500 building, down the hill to the project site. There's no before and after visual simulation because you simply cannot see the site. So we just included a before picture and the significant vegetation, as well as the distance preclude any views from the road to the project site. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rob Aiello with JMC to go through the water, wetlands, stormwater sections.
Thank you very much, Peter. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Rob Aiello. I'm a professional engineer with the firm of JMC. The slide we have up on the screen now shows the 2700 parcel and the three existing wetland areas on the property. The wetland area to the top of the page is actually a stormwater management pond that serves the upper 2500 Westchester Avenue parcel, the existing office building to remain. And the wetland area to the south is a stormwater management area for the 2700 parcel. There's also a small wetland to the east of the developed area, and the Blind Brook is the site's eastern boundary, shown in blue on the slide. So what you'll notice here is that in existing conditions, the 100-year floodplain for FEMA is shown in orange. And we've located that on our plan using the elevations in the FEMA study as our surveys in the same datum as the FEMA study. And what you'll notice is that the existing developed portions of the property do not encroach in the existing 100-year floodplain. And the mapping was actually seen to be visually accurate during IDA, as the applicant witnessed, that the stormwater from the Blind Brook did not actually go into the developed area, did not enter into the existing parking lot. So with that, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So here's the same vantage point in proposed conditions with the project. And you'll see that the proposed project really stays within the existing developed footprint of the site, where the existing office building and parking areas are. As we went through our stormwater analyses and the DEIS, we've identified that the project actually reduces impervious coverage on the property by about 12%, which is about a half an acre. And that when we incorporate the stormwater management requirements for the town and for NYSDEC, because it is a complete redevelopment of the site, we're applying the full standards as though it were a new project, that on average in the storms analyzed, we have a 60% reduction in peak rates of runoff on average for all three storms, and that the volume of stormwater runoff is on average about 50% reduced. So there's a significant reduction in both peak rates and volumes in the various storms analyzed. The lower storms are a little bit higher in those reductions, and the larger storms are a little bit lower, but these are the averages of the storms that we analyzed. The project does not include any encroachments into the floodplain or the floodway of the Blind Brook. The orange area is also shown on this plan for reference, as we had it in existing conditions. Identified in white is a 50-foot easement that is along the Blind Brook, and that was in response to some comments and a request from the town engineer that we allocate an area on the property that could be used for potential future improvements as part of a more macro improvement process, if that's ever undertaken by the municipality. So we've identified this 50-foot area as being an easement offered for future flood management. In addition, based on some subsequent conversations with the town engineer, we're also investigating the feasibility of perhaps providing additional flood storage in this undeveloped portion of the property. So we will be studying that as part of the FEIS process. Next slide, please. Our office also prepared a traffic report that was included in the DEIS. There were 5 intersections analyzed, as shown on the graphic on the right. So we did traffic counts in the September of 2021, and then we used prior counts to adjust the counts that we undertook to be adjusted for pre-pandemic levels. So with the reduction or the removal of the 2,700 square foot, the 2,700 office building, and then replacing it with the 69 townhomes, there is a significant reduction in vehicle trips in the peak hour. Some 108 fewer trips during the weekday AM hour, peak hour, 97 fewer trips in the weekday PM hour, and 24 fewer trips on a Saturday midday. In addition to these reductions, we've also shown that the actual capacity analyses show decreased delays at these intersections compared to the no build condition. So that's kind of an overview of the traffic study and the reductions in traffic resulting from the conversion of office to multifamily residential.
Thank you, Rob. Peter just has a couple more slides. We thank you for indulging us. These are important items that we just like to cover quickly, and then we'll happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Seth. And the last two pieces I just want to cover are the first is the alternatives. Obviously, as required by seeker, the DEIS did look at several alternatives to the proposed project, including the no action alternative in which the zoning wasn't adopted, an alternative where the 2700 building was renovated to attempt to increase leasing. It's noted that the building actually has been renovated a few times and has some new amenities, and it has not produced any results. And then the last alternative that was analyzed is a new multifamily apartment building, which while technically would be permitted under the SVO multifamily, it's important to note that no one is proposing this. The applicant's not proposing this. And though it is permitted, would be permitted by the zoning, it would have to undergo a special permit process and its own seeker review. But again, as required by seeker, we did look at those impacts if that site were developed kind of to its maximum potential. And that's all laid out in the DEIS. Finally, as required by seeker, because the action that the applicant's requesting is a zoning amendment that would apply to sites other than the project site, the DEIS did look at the other areas zoned SVO and what the potential for those areas to be redeveloped as multifamily would be. So we kind of grouped those areas into two sections, east and west of the teardrop, which is located in the middle. So on the west, these are predominantly medical, office, and educational uses. They're very stable right now. Those markets have experienced much less recent pressure, and there really isn't a lot of redevelopment pressure right now. And so therefore, redevelopment of those properties to residential really is not reasonably foreseeable with the adoption of this zoning. On the east side, there are kind of three sets of parcels. There is the 2500, 2700 site, which is analyzed in our EIS. There's the Webb Avenue parcel, which has its own EIS. The Purchase Professional Park, 3000 to 3040, 4 office buildings, constructing a 5th. That's not likely to be redeveloped into residential anytime soon. So that leaves 2900 and 2975 again as theoretically possible for redevelopment as multifamily. Again, it's important to note there are no actual plans or proposals to do so that the applicant is aware of. They would require their own seeker reviews. But nonetheless, the DEIS did analyze a potential maximum build out scenario of those two parcels and presented those impacts in the EIS. And that concludes our very, I swear, quick overview of the EIS, and happy to answer any questions and, more importantly, listen to those public comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Since we have a public hearing scheduled for tonight, let's have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved, Joe.
Second. Okay, thank you. All in favor? Public hearing is now open. Is anybody here participating in this meeting that wants to speak about this application?
And Mr. Chairman, if I can just clarify one point, this is a public hearing with respect to the draft environmental impact statement under the rules of seeker. It requires that all of the comments are addressed in writing completely in the final environmental impact statement. Mr. Mandelbaum has said several times, we'll be ready to answer questions. There would be no answers to questions this evening. Those questions would be answered in full and in writing in the final environmental impact statement document. So a little bit of patience is required.
Okay, with that being said, is there anybody here that wants to talk about the DEIS? Did we have anybody register, Ro? Did you know of?
No, we did not.
Okay. Pat, do you think we're running into some issues with the timing of this?
So I think there might have been confusion about moving to a remote meeting. It's a difficult week. So perhaps that's an issue with people participating. Just to be clear, if anybody does want to speak, you can use the raise hand function in your Zoom, or you can actually just wave your hand so we can see you.
Can
Otherwise,
can I just ask for a little clarification, just to emphasize something here? This draft environmental impact statement is assessing not only the impacts of 2700 Westchester Avenue, but the changes that would occur given the change in the text. Is that correct?
That's correct, Noni. So as Peter just described, those two areas to the west and east of the teardrop are evaluated in the document. Yes.
Got it. Okay. And there was some, we can talk about this more next time, but there was some discussion earlier as to, the board looking at this change in, change in the zoning, if you will. And I don't know really where the board came out on that in the text, the change in the text. This development might look great, but I don't know where we came out in the text, and I don't know how and where we're going to discuss that in this meeting or later, or.
So Noni, just go ahead, Seth, if you'd like to respond to that.
After you, Pat.
So Noni, I was just going to say, part of the action that is under the umbrella of this environmental impact statement is the zoning text referral that the town board has sent to you. So it is this process that will allow you to also evaluate the zoning text amendment along with the zoning, the broader zoning amendment and the project itself.
But the thing that I find, I really don't know who does not have their, I'm hearing music. Does somebody, thank you. The redevelopment of this site, I think, is prudent. I mean, I'm just going to say right there, I think it's terrific, if you will. But I think this topic has come up so many times that we're seeing there's so many apartments that are doing beautifully, but we don't really have residents living in them yet. And so while all these proposals have come up, that we've approved, we haven't really tested it yet. So I'm not quite sure where to come out on really accepting a full-blown text amendment, even if it is only dealing with maybe one or two other building sites. I get it that West Med probably isn't going to need any of attention on this. And really it doesn't seem like a big deal, to change the text, but we don't really know. We've approved an awful lot. And again, this site is terrific. And I don't know why we're lumping the two together. I think it could be fine, but I just don't know why we don't give this a little time to come to fruition and see if all of these projections that we've looked at over the past 3 years, once we have all those wonderful new people in our community, whether the analyses were correct, rather than yeah.
May I briefly respond to that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you can.
Just a couple of factual points. And it's been a few months since we had that joint meeting over the summer of the planning board and the town board. And this was one of the topics was, do we look at the whole corridor or we just limit it to the east side? And the consensus at that time was study the whole corridor. Let's see what it looks like. And then the planning board will make its recommendation at the end of the secret process back to the town board. But I also want to note, the Toll Brothers project, which was sort of the first residential redevelopment. The last I heard, it was somewhere between 70 and 80% leased. I'm
not talking about leasing. I'm thrilled. I heard that myself. I am absolutely thrilled. I mean, we've approved these things, we want to see them be a success. I mean, that's the whole point.
Right.
But I'm more concerned with how many kids really are going to be in the schools. I mean, all of those impacts. How is the traffic really working on Westchester Avenue? How is the flow of, how are our shopping and community service and how is the whole structure working? Not only the
Right.
infrastructure, but kind of the environmental bubble, if you
So
will.
just
I
to
don't-
illustrate the process, Noni, each of those questions that you have now asked will require the applicant to respond to you in the FEIS. So those are exactly
yes.
the questions you should raise, and the applicant's obligated to address them.
Well, thank you. And I would like specifically a little more clarity on why we need to tie up our approval of this particular beautiful application with the unknown of approving a whole text amendment when we have so much so close to being teed up. And if we just had another year or two, we could say, hey, well, yeah, sure, let's change the text amendment. We're doing great here.
Because we're not allowed to spot zone. And,
Seth,
and
But you are
there-
spot zoning right now, and that's your application could be a spot zone thing, and you could make an argument for that. And I don't think it would be a bad argument.
all right,
Okay,
we'll
so-
respond
so-
in the FEIS.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't, it's a spot, we've looked at spot zoning before, many times. Joe has his hand up.
Okay, Tom?
Go ahead, Joe.
So can you guys, I apologize if it's in there, but Rob, when you did the traffic numbers, you talked about, you compared it to full occupancy of 2,700. Did you study, or if you didn't, would you study what it is under the existing 30% occupancy and what the traffic looks like between what it actually is today and what it would be with the new development? And then the other thing is, I didn't see it. And I know we talked about it in a couple of meetings that you've been here, but is there an alternate entrance to the site that you could study or at least propose that you looked at to get in? I mean, I would think that that's going to be a little bit of a drawback to folks because you still have to use the shared driveway and you got to go past the existing 2,500 office building. So those were my two comments. Other than I think it's a really good project. And I think the big difference between this and the other ones is that these are for ownership, not necessarily for rental, which is what the other ones are all being proposed as, which I think makes a big difference as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I have a question about the density. And I can't remember if you did a study on, I know you did a study on no build versus, this project, the way it's laid out. But in looking at the plan, it looks like you have very limited amount of green space, amenity space. In my opinion, I may be totally off base here looking at it, but it looks like you're asking for 69 townhomes, 2-car garages. It appears to be overbuilt. So I just want to point that out, that it's something that I'm thinking about as I look at the project. And it may help if we delve into that a little bit more, maybe even on site, walk around and just, demonstrate it. But in any effect, that's my comment. Anyone else?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd point out the engineering department has retained Woodard and Curran today to assist in the engineering review of the project. So recognizing that has occurred, I would suggest that we continue the public hearing. Even though we haven't had a lot of public comment tonight, it may be because of the holidays, it may be because of the remote meeting, but nevertheless, we need to give Woodard and Curran some time to review the plan and provide comment to you as well.
Okay, good point. Seth, do you have anything else you want to say before we adjourn the public hearing and continue it in January?
Sure, I would just ask that if at all possible, we get any comments from Woodard and Curran or any other consultant a reasonable time in advance of the January 25th meeting, so we have a chance to look at it before the meeting. Understanding that we'll respond in the FEIS, but to the extent we could get a peek at those before the meeting, that would be much appreciated.
So you're asking engineering consultants to be timely on the reporting?
I dare to dream, Tom.
That's a big ask, man.
Hey,
And
hey,
Rob,
hey,
Rob,
hey,
Rob, Rob,
Ah,
present company excluded.
Oh, thank you.
It's a fresh new year.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So do we need a motion to continue
Yes,
the public
to
hearing?
adjourn to the January meeting.
Okay, we have that motion.
January
please?
25th, right?
Yes,
Yes.
I'll move it, Joe.
I'll second Marshall.
okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Looking
Thank
forward
you.
to-
Happy and healthy, most importantly, New Year to everyone. Happy holidays.
Yes, thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Night. I think, Ro, are we still doing Duncan first and Yao after them?
Yes, yes, the applicant asked if we could, yes.
All right, so that's what so Dunkin' Donuts is up next.
Yes.
Okay,
Good evening, Chairman Heaslip, members of the planning board. Can you hear me all right?
yes, Ken.
Great. For the record, Kristen Motel from the law firm Cuddy and Fader for the applicant, who is the property owner. I'm here tonight for my colleague, Taylor
Kristen, I'm
Palmer.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Ro, can we elevate Phil Greeley to a panelist?
Thank you.
Yes.
All
All
right,
right.
Kristen, go ahead.
All right, so I have the opportunity to cover this tonight since I will have back-to-back hearings before the planning board. I'm also joined by John Canning, our traffic consultant from Kimley Horn, Chris Raffaelli, the architect from Studio Architecture, as well as Peter Marinin, who is the current and future Dunkin' operator, and Brad Phillips, the property owner, who have all appeared before you tonight, so you're familiar with them. The whole team is here. And it's my understanding that, we've appeared a number of times within the last year in furtherance of the application for an amended site plan approval to replace the existing Dunkin' building with the new Dunkin' building that will have a drive-through. And the public hearing was opened, I believe, in November. For the benefit of the public tonight, and I know there is a very long agenda, we'll just plan to give some background with a brief presentation and also summarize our December 7th supplemental submission, which was provided in response to some of those limited comments that were received last month. And again, we'll be brief. I'm sure you've had the opportunity to review that supplemental, and we don't want to take up too much time. The materials that we did provide earlier this month included an updated traffic and parking impact assessment from Kimley Horn, including a metrics of Dunkin's corporate timing and some average time spent by local Harrison customers that demonstrate the low wait times, the shorter queues, and less parking lot congestion. So, without further ado, I think, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you if you briefly want to summarize the renderings and the plans. Then we'll have John really just give an overview of his amended impact assessment. And Pete, if you want to summarize the data and the metrics after that, let's kick it off. So, Chris.
I'm Chris Raffi, principal at Studio Architecture. So the building from last you saw it at the opening of the public hearing has remained unchanged. But just to walk through some of the changes that happened leading up to that meeting for the benefit of those who may not have been in attendance at that first public hearing. So you might recall that the building entrance was more oriented to the driveway between CVS and the new building. We've rotated that so that it is entirely on, the main entrance is entirely on Halsted. We've also removed the dormer that was in the driveway between CVS and the building. So the building is now entirely street front and picked up on the material cues from along Halsted. The water table is similar stone to what the post office is. The gray and black coloring is similar to other developments on the street, while retaining the Dunkin' national identification of the orange with their sign. It's really the building.
Great. Thanks, Chris. John, do you want to review some of the parking analysis?
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. Thanks, Chris. So we provided a memorandum with some additional information that the board had requested, specifically, Duncan's service time targets and their metrics. So their service time target is 150 seconds or better for customers. And we also provided some metrics from 80+ New York City metro area Duncans. They were in table 3, which showed that the average service rate is about 142 seconds per customer. And this is without, most of those stores do not have the added measures that are proposed for this store, which include the line busting tablets, a digital display order board, and also cameras and monitors. Table 4 provided a breakdown of the Harrison product sales. It listed the percentage of products sold and the average build time. So we did a weighted average projection of how long it would take to build the breakfast product, and that worked out to be just 32 seconds. Obviously, there's more to delivering the product than just building it, but they will clearly be able to exceed their target of 150 seconds per customer. We also, to demonstrate the benefits of the project, conducted a survey of how long it currently takes customers to get served at the existing facility. So that includes, you have to park, then you have to get out, then you have to walk in, then you have to wait online, then you place your order, then you wait for your order to be delivered, then you walk back out to your car, you make sure you put everything in the right order, you back out and you drive away. So on average, that took about 5.5 minutes to do so. And so you can see the drive-through process will be considerably more efficient, getting customers in, out, and gone more quickly, and reducing congestion on the site. So that's basically the information that we provided. We hope it was informative, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And I just want to also touch upon the traffic control measures, the left turn prohibition, and the applicant's willingness to install the flashing beacon and everything. That's also been okayed with the county. That's
sure.
correct.
We've submitted all of that previously. It's been reviewed by the planning board. It's been reviewed by their consultant. It's been reviewed by the county. We stand by our recommendation that it will improve safety and efficiency. And, I think the applicant is willing to commit to implement it. Thank you.
Great. Pete, do you want to summarize a few things with the metrics and the business model?
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. I'd be happy to. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, before I begin, happy holidays to you and your families. It's great to be here. Great to be back in front of you all to talk about a project that I think really is a win-win situation for basically all the stakeholders. I think it's a strong project for Brad. I think it's a strong project for our organization. And I think it's a great project for the community and the community members. I've been doing this a really long time, 25+ years. My organization presently has 75 Dunkin' Donuts stores spread across 3 different states. At the risk of sounding brash and bold, we're pretty good at what we do. 60% of our stores are drive-through stores. We have a great degree of experience and a great degree of ability to execute relative to drive-through standards. We also recognize that the cost of this project will be significant, and the only way that I'll get a return on my capital, as well as Mr. Phillips, will be making sure that we execute. I understand that that's a concern, certainly for the board and certainly for the community, that you don't want any backup into the major intersections. You don't want traffic, bottlenecks and things of that nature. And I appreciate that. To be perfectly candid, neither do I. Because when those things happen, it tells me I have a problem in my organization or a problem in my particular store. It also tells me that I'm not making the kind of return on my capital that I want to make. So we're very astute and very focused on making sure that our drive-throughs execute. And by executing, it's talking about putting all of the appropriate metrics in place, to rewarding the team and the people who are working at the store financially, and also basically trying to get to a place where the investment, that the investment we make matches the facility and matches the community. Hence the building that you saw, which I think is truthfully a very attractive building, and I think it fits the architecture and the demeanor of downtown Harrison. At the end of the day, there's a lot of different things that we can talk about And I can sit here and pontificate about my experience and how many donuts we sell and how many cups of coffee we sell and all those kind of good things. But I think I'd rather see if y'all have some questions that are pressing and urgent, and maybe I can address them.
Kristen, anybody else?
There's no one else from our team who's going to speak right now. I mean, I think what we heard is the responsiveness of Duncan to these concerns, and you know, just a long history of, you know, going back, making more modifications to the project, and a willingness to work with you all. So I think it would be helpful to have some Q&A. We were, I think it's our understanding that there's no outstanding consultant comments or engineering comments from the town and the town's consultant. So if there are comments from board members, we'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Okay, we still have a, this is a public hearing, is it not? So
Yes,
we should, I guess, have a motion to reopen the public hearing. Do we have that? In case anybody here from the public wants to comment. Joe, you?
I'll move, Chip.
Chip, okay, second, all in favor? Public hearing is now open. Is anybody here in the meeting that would like to talk about this application? Okay, anybody on the board have any comments about the current submission? Yes, Joe.
So a couple of things. I found your numbers, really interesting. But math is not, as Dr. Wool can tell you from superintendent of schools, math is not my strong suit. Is there someone, Pat or Tom, that we know of that could kind of analyze that so that the numbers are what they are and it makes some sense to us? And is there a way to independently verify those numbers? I mean, this is and Peter, I'm not saying that you're fabricating them, but this is a big lift for me. And you know all the reasons why. So the more you can nail it down that these came from Duncan and these are your numbers from the store, and somebody can say, yes, we can move these cars through here, whether that's our I don't know if our consultants had the opportunity to look at this and make any comments to it. And then John, I didn't see it, but I know we talked about it. I'm concerned that the whoever has the right to say no left turn, even though it's a condition of site plan approval, someone who has some other board that has more authority than we do can say, sorry, we don't want to enforce that, or we don't want to make it happen. And so what happens to the analysis of the parking lot, and where do those cars go?
Well, it's a county highway, so the authority lies with the county regarding the left turn prohibition. And they have a lot of other issues that they have to deal with. So, if they review this and approve it, it's unlikely that they're going to come back and disapprove it. It's probably a more pressing local issue.
Correct. And that's what happened last time, right? Because the planning board, as part of the site plan approval, was no left turn. And apparently from the historical record, it was less than a week that there were no left turns. And then there's been left turns for 25 years or however long you've been there. I didn't see an analysis of what that does to your analysis of what happens behind the store and the spillover of that, and where those people go and how they get out. And again, I don't think I'm the only one, but there is no place for somebody to pull over. I walked out 2 days ago. Somebody was in the left lane, just stopped right there. Somebody ran in to go get whatever they're going to get in, and they were just stuck there, and there were 20 cars stuck behind them. There's no way to put the car on the way out if somebody does that. How do we address that?
So I do hear what you're saying. I will say that the proposed improvements are going to widen the access, because right now it's about, I think it's about 15 feet.
The exit, John. This
Yeah,
is the
so,
exit.
so the exit will be wider too. Right by the building right now, it's only 13 feet.
Mhm.
We've narrowed it down at the exit to the street so that you'll have only one car going out at a time as opposed to two. And we could make some minor modifications, I guess, to the area right in front of the pickup window to allow people to pull forward a little bit, if that would, make you feel a little better. But,
But only because that backs everything up, right? But so you're saying that there's going to be 2 lanes that wide enough for 2 cars to fit there?
It's wide enough for 2 cars until you get right to the street, because the
Right, because you have the bump out, so you're trying to prevent people from making the left turn. I get it.
yeah.
So also, I'd like to point out, I believe Phil Greeley is on the Zoom, and I believe he was provided with a copy of our materials also, so he would be able to comment from the town's perspective on the data that was provided by Duncan. And also, John, while that data was provided by Duncan, it was also verified by Kimley Horn. So it's not just some like arbitrary and conflated numbers. It does work. And in terms of the enforcement of the left turn, if that was a condition of approval, and that's something that the county has jurisdiction over, to the extent that enforcement is an issue, or there's another body, a municipal body, trying to remove that restriction, I believe that our applicant would take steps to and is their right to be able to enforce the restriction, as well as the county. And that's something that
With all due respect, that the town board of Harrison went to the local legislator and said that they didn't want to have that left turn there, it would get removed. That's a fact of life.
So I'll offer 2 things, Mr. Stout, and I do recognize that it has happened before and that it is a concern. The first one is, I want to go on the record and say that it is a safety measure because it reduces left turns across the pedestrian. So, to the extent that the town board disrespects or disregards this board's judgment in that matter, they should be advised that it is a safety measure that they're taking out. They may still just go ahead and do it. I can't guarantee you that they won't, obviously. The second aspect or item I will offer is that the applicant is committed to performing a post-construction study to confirm that everything is working well. And if it's not working well, then they'll be back in front of this board trying to figure out what happened to that left turn sign and why it's not there and how it's going to be made work. And it may end up being reinstituted. The expectation and the hope is that it's being put in for all of the right reasons. It's being approved by the county and by this board, and that it will remain there. But, as with anything in life, there's some crazy things happen from time to time, and we can't plan for them. The expectation is the sign will be there. It would be approved by this board. It'll be approved by the county. And there's a mechanism to review operating conditions a year from now or 6 months after it's constructed or whatever, and make sure that it's working well.
And I get all of that. It just.
Further, if I can, Mr. Stout.
Sure.
The information that was provided wasn't provided by me. It was provided by Duncan Brands themselves. They were good enough to put together some averages and some information that they thought would be beneficial, or at least on my request would be beneficial for you all to be able to go over and hopefully be able to understand.
And then Mr. Marin then gave them to me, and I stated that he gave them to him, to me, basically. So
who's on first, John?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk about, because you brought it up, Kristen, you talked about historical. We have a historical, and it's continuing to this day, an historical approach that this Duncan unit has taken to deliveries. And the historical, and we've been in front of the board for, I don't know how long you've been in front of the board.
Over 8 months.
How long?
Since February. This is the
Okay.
8th hearing.
So, and during that time, I think from the first meeting, we talked about the difficulty with this site with regards to deliveries. And from that day on, you knew that the board was watching, that it was concerned, that we had issues with how deliveries were made here. We were told time and time again, verbally and in writing, that you would have deliveries with smaller trucks and they would be, you could hold that up, Noni. That they would be done, they would be delivered at night after hours with smaller trucks. Well, you know, unfortunately, I mean, I was there
So
on the 8th of December, and it was a disaster. In the middle of the day, the truck was unloading, had backed in, held up traffic going both ways in order to back into the driveway, parked, blocking the CVS, what would be the CVS side of this driveway. The cars had to actually drive over the sidewalk next to Dunkin' in order to navigate a way back into the parking lot. And the people that were walking on the sidewalk had to stop and get out of the way. To add insult to injury, the delivery was done. I was watching it, and the delivery was completed. The driver locked up his truck and then walked across the street and got lunch. Came back to his truck, drove out, blocked the traffic. He made a left-hand turn out of that one-way exit and then proceeded up the street, but blocked traffic while he was trying to maneuver his way out. Now, this isn't the last time this has taken place. It's not the first time, but you're asking us to trust you as an applicant, as an operator, as a property owner, that all of these things you're telling us that you're going to do, all of these issues that we have talked about, the line busting that you have to put in, the cameras, the extra staff you're going to put on, the deliveries are going to happen at night with smaller trucks, on and on and on and on. I'm having a little bit of difficulty looking at your credibility as an applicant, because it's just not proving out right now. This is a perfect example.
So Chairman.
So that's one point. Okay, I'm still.
So if I can, I'd
Yeah.
like to respond to that, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. First and foremost, we get one delivery a week. One delivery a week to that facility.
Mhm.
That being said, I believe what we committed to was, given the structure of the existing facility, it's virtually impossible for us to be able to do an overnight delivery based on the infrastructure of the existing store. What we had committed to, or what I have committed to,
Can I, Peter, I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you. What does that mean? The
it means,
infrastructure.
it means that the delivery people would not be able to effectively and efficiently make the delivery without some of our staff present. The overnight delivery opportunity will come and will be, and is committed to, based on all the documentation we've provided to you, once we have a new facility. We've talked about it, we've represented it. I don't know what's not clear, and if it isn't clear, I'm making it clear right now.
Well, what's not clear, quite
Furthermore-
frankly, Peter, and I appreciate that, what's not clear is that whether you're actually going to do it.
Well, I think,
Well-
Chairman, the
Well,
That's
interesting.
that's the problem we're
I-
having. You've known this has
No.
been an issue for us and the town
Yes,
for since February. And
Correct.
it continues to be flaunted and done every week.
I
It
think
doesn't
that's,
make any sense to me.
I'm not sure that's exactly accurate from my perspective. What I'd like to say to you is, I understand your concern. I think that we tried to address your concern on a go-forward basis, right? I don't have the ability to change route structures nor vehicle sizes right now based on the existing infrastructure of that building. If I did, I certainly would have done it. I don't want to get into a contentious conversation about delivery trucks, because I think that sort of clouds what the benefit of this plan and this proposal look like, right? So at the end of the day, I hear you, and I'm making a personal commitment to you and the rest of the board members. And it's in writing that we will have overnight deliveries at that facility. I further went on to say that I will make best efforts to reduce the size of the vehicle if that further assuages the group. So again, there's not much more that I can do about that at this point.
I believe
is
there's,
Brad. Can you
there's
guys
no,
hear me?
there's no mechanism currently that restricts the applicant, certainly not undermining your concerns. They're valid and we hear them. And, you know, our client has gone on record for saying there can be a condition of approval, which will give the town an enforcement mechanism here going forward to make this only overnight deliveries, only once a week, and on and on. But right now, as conditions exist, there's no enforcement mechanism for the town, and you know the client is not bound by anything. We're voluntarily offering to be bound by that. So going forward, there shouldn't be a problem, and if there is, something can be done about it.
And that's, I think, I'm sorry, Brad. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Brad.
Let me just add in right here for one sentence is there is no present restriction or requirement for that. So we're doing things that are forward thinking to, you know, work within the town. There was no requirement. We're going to make a change. We're going to make the change, but we need a different facility to make that change, and staffing is what Peter's trying to say. So looking at what the oranges are right now and what our apples are going to be, it's not necessarily a fair assessment. But as Pete is saying, we're gonna put it in writing to you guys. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we're here for almost 20 months, you know?
Yeah, okay, but I get all that, and that's why we're here, because we're trying to see if this works. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're spending our time as well. Okay, we're trying to see if it works. And that's what we're hung up on. We're hung up on the current operation that seems to be causing issues with the downtown vis-a-vis the deliveries. Okay, that's a problem. And the deliveries then back up the traffic. The people are trying to make the left-hand turns, blah, blah, blah. You know the story. I don't have to repeat it. And so if we have an issue, for instance, in the queue, if just going forward now, you're operating, you have a full complement of people in the queue, and you haven't provided an area for somebody to pull over because they got coffee they didn't want, they got the wrong donut, they're in that queue, they can't pull off. So what do? They stop. It's a concern of ours. It's a very constrained site.
I think this is where you let Pete reiterate the data.
It's a very constrained site.
Talk about the data.
You don't have room for error. And
So
Peter,
if I
you may be
can-
the best operator in the country, and you probably are, and you're proud of it. But this situation here, where we are in the downtown, we don't have room for an error before we have a problem in our downtown. Okay, our downtown, by the way, is transitioning to. It's interesting. We've been transitioning, and John, you know that because you've represented a number of the property owners downtown, where we're pushing transit-oriented development. Okay, and that's what the downtown is going toward, and that's what we're trying to go. We're trying to get the cars off the road. This project sort of flies in the face of that, but it is what it is. But it does fly in the face of what we're trying to do downtown. So there's a lot of issues that we're grappling with, and we're trying to get to it. And then, I don't seem to be able to. We're depending on everything working 100%. If somebody's camera doesn't work, somebody's tablet doesn't work, if the guy drops a tray of coffee and he's supposed to be delivering it to the other side of the window when the people are picking up, it's going to be a traffic problem for us.
If you're short staffed, if there's a shortage of staff one day and the whole line is just moving slower, and I know what I go for drive-ins is because it is fast. So with all these numbers, these wonderful numbers, Peter, and with how efficient you are, that efficiency could likely draw more customers, which is what you want. So we're also trying to think through, with this great throughput, is it actually going to attract more people? And what's the balance there of, you're doing everything right, but then it kind of backing up on itself anyway?
I think listen, I think that's a fair comment, and I appreciate that. And what I would say, is this. We're talking about a present circumstance, and I hear your concerns. I really do, and I share them, to be perfectly candid with you. I get the frustrations, I get the aggravation, I get the nuisance, and I fully understand them. I think the plan and the proposal that we've brought forward addresses the vast majority of those things and basically mitigates many of them. Furthermore, it's Chairman, you mentioned about people who have wrong orders and things of that nature. I have statistical data. It tells me that that store, that particular location, out of the 70 some that we own and operate, had 22 complaints. 22 complaints through November out of 150,000 transactions. So I think we operate and I think we execute at a reasonably high level. I don't see any reason in the world why we would expect that that would go down. And I think it would only go up based upon all of the technology that we're bringing to bear against this development, for not just for me, but for you. We don't like to go into communities and operate and get into contentious conversations and be the poster child for bad behavior in the communities we operate in. We like to be community oriented, and we like to be respected by the folks that come and visit with us. So at the end of the day, I fully, honestly appreciate your concerns. I really do. And I think the proposal put forth after the last X number of months and the time and energy that the team has spent to provide you the data tells a story. And we can sit here and we can talk about, the one-offs, and we can talk about somebody got sick and didn't come to work, and we can talk about somebody spilled their coffee, and we can talk about all those things. And those might be legitimate. But the truth of the matter is, I think the resounding evidence tells me that this is a win-win for all of us.
Hey, Pete, can I add one flavor here to your discussion? Is that we missed a little bit is part of the queuing issue, as we all know, when we've driven up, and we talked about this in a group meeting and then we relayed it, we forgot to relay it here, is should there be a line, as Pete has pointed out before, people roll with it and they use other technologies, such as people can order on the app, order ahead. If they see that there's a line, we've all gone to Starbucks or Dunkin' or Chick-fil-A or whatever it is, if there's a line that's going to be created and there's going to be parking, you're going to order on your app. You're going to pull in and you're going to walk in, and people, if it's the first 2 weeks and everybody's learning what the quid pro quo is going to be of that line, they're going to know, I don't want to wait in line. Nobody wants to sit in line. No one wants to back up onto the street. No one wants to get honked at, and no one wants to cause an issue. And they're going to work around it very quickly, just like they do now. We all know that lot. There's a little bit of insanity. And again, we're taking 10 spots of cars out of pulling into that lot of insanity and walking them through a more efficient line. I mean, let's be honest. And so again, there's other things that are at play here that we're all kind of missing what Pete's bringing to the table. Minimal errors. People are going to drive away. They're not necessarily going to notice that they've got an error. If there's an error, they're going to come back another day. Pete's going to get a phone call. They're going to give them a free cup of coffee, and then they're going to come back. And that's just the way that life really works versus staring at it on an Excel spreadsheet. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to remember that that little point there, that people are going to pull in and use their app.
And Board Member Reich, just to your concern, our traffic study assumed conservatively that there would be a 38% increase in traffic at the store, and that's what we evaluated.
By the way, just one other piece of information that might be useful. Approximately 40% of the business in Westchester County is coming in electronically. So Brad, you made a wonderful point that I neglected to mention, that generally speaking, consumers don't want to wait. They're not really keen on sitting in lines. So they're going to figure out the most efficient way for them to get served within our facility. And if that means finding the parking place because 9 other folks are in queue and it's freed up a number of parking places behind the facility, they're going to do that. They're going to park their car, they're going to walk around. The inside of the store is more often than not less trafficked than the drive-through, and they're going to be serviced that way. So I think it was a really good point. Just wanted to reemphasize it.
Pete, I feel much more confident in this situation if there was a place on either side of your queue when the people are driving in where a person could pull out and open up their sugar packet and drop it in the coffee. Okay, or if they're getting a drink that they got to shake, iced tea, people shake it up. Okay, I feel more, in a lot of your drive-throughs, you have that opportunity. You're not so constricted where you once you get into that line, you ain't getting out. Okay, you're in that line, and if you're not going, snapping your fingers and moving through the line, we're going to have an issue out on the street. Okay, so it's just, again, to go back to, you're efficient, you're a good operator. Brad, you're a good owner, you're a good taxpayer in town. We love you and all that stuff. This particular project in the site it's so dependent on everything working 100%. Those 150 seconds. 165 seconds we're screwed. I mean, I don't know if that's right or not wrong, but you're just throwing that as an example. So that's where I'm going, and that's where my headspace is right now.
So if I
see it
can,
down there, I watch it. I'm really, taking it seriously. A lot of us have gone down there. A lot of us have gone out to try to find other locations that we could say, yeah, this is exactly what we got, and we can then model after it. We don't have a model, okay? But we have good other spaces with good other operations of Dunkin's where there is a little more room for error, where somebody could pull over when your cars drive in, there's a white line, okay? If the guy comes in off the street or the woman and they don't hug to the left-hand side near Dunkin's and they're over in CVS, traffic is coming in through CVS, could be an issue. So it's not like it can't be done. It's just so thin for error.
Mr. Chairman, with respect, we understand that you're concerned about that, and that's why we've projected that it will work without the line buster and without the pull around, and that's why we have the line buster in there, and that's why we have the pull around, because we know it's a concern of yours. We can't predict everything in life. It's going to run smoothly 99 out of 100 mornings, and one morning when we need the line buster or we need to pull around, we have a backup plan, because we understand your concern and we want to make sure that it works.
How do we know, John? When we do it, when you do a two lot subdivision, okay, or we do Avalon's going to build a building, we have examples. We know that there's going to be X amount of people living in the building. We're going to have so many bathrooms, so many elevators, stairwells, fire alarms, parking spots, amenity space. We know that, okay? We have examples, and we have examples all over Westchester. So we can hang our hats on that. Could we run the operation as if it was what you want now for the next month and see if it works?
I think actually the applicant.
Can we do that? If we did that and it came back and it was a success, you'd shut me up in a heartbeat.
Well, I'm not sure we could do that because the site's not set up for it. I mean, we're making all of these improvements. I mean, I wish we could, but I'm not sure that we can.
I would like to say something, though. This one particular site is very much the nexus of Harrison, very much so. There are no other locations like this in Harrison. It's right near the school. Lots of kids come after middle school and are there. We get school from the elementary school just up the street. We've got a Catholic church just up the street. We've got lots and lots of pedestrian traffic, a large amount. I was there today and it's just a lot of pedestrian traffic. So when you're telling me there's a 30% increase in vehicular, God, that makes me worried about my kids, quite frankly. I'll be honest with you.
Well, it's 20 extra trips per hour, and it's conservative. So it's a small percentage compared to what's traveling along Halsted Avenue.
How are you making it safer? I mean, honestly, I crossed that road with a carriage, a baby carriage, and I feel like I'm about to get clipped by a semi at any point in time.
So we're proposing the left turn prohibition so that you won't have cars turning left across the crosswalk. And we're proposing a rapid rectangular flashing beacon similar to one that's proposed at the crosswalk when you come out from the train station at Avalon, which has been proven to reduce accidents, pedestrian accidents by 47%. So these are measures that we're offsetting
There are
any
so many
impact we
better
might have.
locations for a drive-through. I just don't understand why this particular one.
Everybody, can I speak for 1 second? Couple things. One is the drive-through has an access point where it's a pinch point. So the traffic coming out is not a speeding runway to exit onto Halsted. Okay, and this is Brad. I'm the landlord. And so there's a pinch point there. Everybody's going to be slow. And then there's other factors built in, the sign and the blinking light, the beacon. Okay. So, and it will be a new building and everyone's going to pay attention. So that's one element here. Okay. So hopefully that will, I can't hear.
I can hear you, Brad.
So
Can you hear me?
anybody
Okay,
else
thank
that
you.
has in the room that wants to comment on the application? And that's, as it's a public hearing, so.
I mean, my
And
main
is Phil on
concern
this
is,
call, by
God
the way? You
forbid,
can validate our traffic
listen,
data.
if a child gets hit, it's on you. You understand that, right? It is. It's, if a child is hit, either some kid on his bike or otherwise, it's you guys.
That's it's a very serious issue, and I respect that, and that's my job. And I do it across the county, and that's why we're studying this all together, and we're looking at countermeasures to make overall the area a safer place. So the concept and the goal is to reduce accidents through these measures, because a child could be hit tomorrow, just the way things are.
And I'd also like to point out, the
Okay, no one's
applicant
taken
has.
any sort of mitigation towards improving the situation as is. That's partially why, like, I have no confidence is no one's taken any sort of proactive stances to like make this current situation better. Like the current situation right now, I feel is very dangerous, and no one's taken any proactive steps to ameliorate that. I know that you're saying we will do it if you approve. We will do this if you approve. We'll do that if you approve. But why don't you do it now?
Point taken.
Anybody else? Thank you, Kimberly. Okay, so
Can we
Joe,
just-
you asked for some further study on the metrics?
Yeah, yes. So if somebody can, and if Phil, if our consultant did that, then fine. I haven't seen that. And then I really would like to see what the no left turn does for if they take it away again and people are allowed to make the left turn, what that does to the parking lot. And then just the last thing is, as I've been listening to everybody, and I'm empathetic to the fact that you have offered a window to see if this is working or not. But what's the end game here if it doesn't work? What happens? Do we go back to the way it is? It becomes only you park in the parking lot. I mean, once it's there, it's there. And if you're wrong and we're right, our fears come true, and it's really a problem. And we have this 6-month analysis period. I believe that's the time frame that you offered, which is something that no other applicant has offered us ever. So I take that very seriously. But what happens if it doesn't work?
I think.
I mean, are you willing to guarantee that they will take it out? I mean, if you can't prove that it works in 6 months,
Well,
I think you'll stop doing that.
I think, Mr. Stout, the answer to that question would be, if it doesn't work, then understand why it doesn't work and propose measures to make it work. And there's all, if that doesn't work, then we're back to your question. But I don't think the first step is to take it out. I think the first step is to understand why it's not working and fix it.
I got it. So that's my question is, what's the end game, right?
Well, the end game is to make it work.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak for 1 second? This is Brad again.
Hey, Brett.
Okay, so we've hired John, who's an expert in traffic, and then the town has hired Phil Greeley, who's also an expert in traffic. And we've been working hand in hand with Phil and John for months and months and months and months here. And I would love to have Phil speak to some of the concerns that you guys have, because we're working with you guys, we've gotten approval through the engineering group. We are, the left turn is already there, and we think that that's a good thing, not a bad thing. We want the blinking light because we've learned that that is a good thing and not a bad thing. And then you guys have hired your own expert here, and we're the only ones who are speaking. So I'd like to throw it back to you guys, if you don't mind, and have your own experts, speak to what we've been doing.
With regards to traffic.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the biggest.
Phil's issue in his report was that he saw more queuing at Dunkin' Donuts than what you're saying you're going to be able to maintain on your site. So Phil, I don't know if you wanted to chime in.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Chairman, Philip Greeley, Colliers Engineering and Design. So many of the measures that have been worked into this were a result of our numerous reviews. We had recommended the post opening monitoring study, which the applicant has agreed to. But let me just kind of go through some of the key highlights rather than repeat a lot of things that have been said. So relative to Mr. Stout's comment about bypassing, he's exactly correct. The plan has a bypass lane on the entry, and it has a 2-lane exit, except where it intersects with Halsted, where it necks down. And the purpose there is to enforce not only signing the no left turn exiting, and also to narrow it down so that you don't have multiple cars trying to exit side by side when there's pedestrian flows there. Relative to the traffic numbers, Mr. Canning, as he stated, did account for increased traffic. And those numbers are reasonable in terms of what he's estimated. A good portion of those are attracted from the existing roadway. The studies support that, through not just this location, but multiple locations. In terms of the metrics that have been provided from Dunkin', they are consistent with what we've seen on other facilities, not necessarily in this area, but throughout the region, in Orange County, Rockland County, areas where we see the processing times. The one item that I'll get into relative to the queuing, the treatment of the crosswalk, that current condition is not good at the crosswalk, as many people have said. The RRFBs are the current method that is being used for mid-block crosswalks. The applicant has agreed to that. They've gotten some conceptual approval from the county relative to that. The data shows that it does reduce pedestrian vehicular accidents. That's, there's published information out there that supports that. We did have some additional comments, which would be more into the final site plan, relative to pedestrian improvements along the sidewalk in general. And this applies to any driveway where traffic will be crossing the pedestrian path. And there's maybe some other tweaks. The applicant has already made some changes. They've moved where the entrance to the building is, which was one of our other comments. As we noted in one of our reviews, at other locations, right now, they have stacking for about 10 vehicles before it would back out onto Halsted. Their proposal is to use the line busting, which provides some more stacking. Now, some of that stacking does interface with some of the remaining parking spaces in the area, but that is how they are proposing to address this. That is done by other fast food entities throughout the country, such as Chick-fil-A and, you know, more the true fast food lunch venues. They have used that successfully. This site is tight. There's no question about it in terms of the stacking ability, but that's their proposal. And that is their measure of addressing that. As you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, there is not a lot of leeway here. There's not a extra bypass lane. There's things that can happen, but I believe that their proposal is to implement these techniques such as the line busting. And again, you know, if somebody doesn't show up for work, there's always that possibility that something could happen here. But in terms of this particular site, based on the metrics and, you know, what they're showing as the typical PQ, because of COVID and the pandemic, historically, we saw that 8 to 10 cars was about the max queue that people would typically wait for either Dunkin', Starbucks, etc. As a result of the pandemic, people have tended to wait longer. That's where we came up with the observations of 12 to 13 vehicles. You then get to a point where people will only wait a certain amount of time online. There is a bypass lane, but again, the line busting and the operations are the key to getting that to work. If those things don't function, you know, there is no leeway really on this site. In terms of the deliveries, we've seen that, you know, out there and what happens. That is very critical, but the operator is making a commitment to it. I think at this point, you know, from a technical standpoint, you know, the information they provided has addressed the comments. With the no left turns restriction, that is something that the county has mandated. It's a condition of approval. Yes, as Mr. Stout points out, it could be lifted if pressure was put on them. And relative to that, we also had the applicant look at what would happen in terms of people being forced to make the right turn. What are their options? You know, instead of making U-turns, what paths do they have? And with that restriction, you know, some people may choose not to come to this location because they don't want to deal with the restriction or the potential of a ticket. But again, could that ever go away? I think it's a question of, and more for the attorneys, how it's written into any resolution, how it's enforced. But I think in general, they've addressed all the technical items. The information they presented is reasonable, but I understand the fear that there's not a lot of leeway here. There's not, you know, that extra space of having one more car length after they leave the drive-through before they come out onto Halsted. So there is, you know, still that variability. One of the reasons for the post construction monitoring that we recommended that they've agreed to is in the past on projects, we've seen where certain things get tweaked slightly. And for example, positioning of a sign from a visibility standpoint, some additional signs being added. So our experience has been that the post monitoring really is to tweak things, to make sure everything is functioning properly, making sure that what the applicant has agreed to is kept to. And, you know, the worst case scenario, I guess, would be if something doesn't work and they don't have the line busting and it's not being implemented, yeah, the option would be to go back to people parking
Or
and
it doesn't,
using
or
the
it doesn't
store.
work.
I would
That's,
say the worst case scenario is that someone gets hurt. That's the worst case scenario here, especially since you have limited view for someone who's under 4 feet.
so in
Very
terms of,
limited view.
in terms of the crosswalk on Halsted Avenue, I think they're making that improvement. I think there are some other things that could be done along the sidewalk itself relative to not only, you know, the traffic from Dunkin' Donuts, but CVS traffic leaving near the post office that could enhance the pedestrian movements. But, you know, this site exists today, you know, so you have the driveway movements. There are absolutely, with the schools there, with the church, people crossing the street, you know, there's a lot of pedestrian activity. There's no question. And I think the fact that it already exists has a potential. There probably are some things that could be done immediately. This RRFB that the counties agreed to is an effective method. As I indicated, there probably are some additional things that could be done. The bump out that they created was purposely to make sure that that pedestrian vehicle interface was better. I think there's some additional things that can be incorporated into the site plan. And that's one of the reasons, I guess, you know, the public hearing is to get all these comments so that nothing does get missed.
Thank you, Phil.
I just have-
Anybody else?
I just
Go
have
ahead,
one more thing, Tom, I'm sorry, and I know this is not within your control. There is, unless Brad, you own both of the parcels, but you have no control over CVS's deliveries. And there are significant numbers of times, they're not tractor trailers, but they're, you know, the dairy guy, there's 2 or 3 of them, they consistently park right along the CVS building, just past the Dunkin' Donuts. And now we got a problem, right? None of you are making, not within your control. You know, and I don't know what we do about it. I think, you know, the hardest part we're coming, that there's zero room for.
Well, don't forget, Joe, I'm sorry, this is Brad, that Pete is committed to overnight deliveries. So that's going to help.
This is
him.
not
That's the
within your,
traffic
yeah,
issue.
listen, I got it.
Yes, I
Assuming that
can't help
everything
you
you do
with.
is okay,
Yeah.
you can't, yeah. I mean, you know, listen, and I've seen people come out of CVS and make the left turn. You know, where you're only supposed to make the right turn. Those people are nuts because you can't see anyway. But, you know, so people do stupid things. I just, you know, my father used to say it a different way, but we're trying to put 5 pounds of sand in, you know, in a 3-pound bag here. And it's, listen, I'm just, you know, we're just concerned if it doesn't work, you know, now we're stuck with it. And I don't know if there's a condition of site approval that if it doesn't work, after all the tweaks, that we're gonna take it out, then maybe I'm okay.
Hey, Joe, one thing real quick, and then I'll stop talking. I'm sorry. I had a lot of coffee today. Is we really feel that through, you know, 20 months of discussions with Phil, John on our team, your engineer, the town, your feedback, et cetera, is we've put a building on the site that is going to take, again, 10 cars that will pull into your lot now and try to chaotically park to acknowledge Kim's concern about random traffic. We're going to take cars and put them into an efficient line that they're going to come into one place and they're going to exit from one place in a pinch point where they can't speed. And we really feel, again, we would have not gone through this process if we didn't think that through, you know, this isn't the only building that I own, so I'm bringing some expertise to the site here that and certainly Pete with his, you know, he's got 75 Dunkin' Donuts with, you know, many drive-throughs, is that it really is going to create a more efficient lot and site that is going to actually help the center of the town and not hurt the center of the town, or else we wouldn't have gone through this process. I mean, that's an honest, you know, we wouldn't, you know, we're not trying to like lay it out like we won and yay, this is great and we're leaving. Like, I'm there, my wife is from, just up the road. Like, we really are trying to do this, and we really feel that through the data and Phil's feedback, that we really are creating a site with the lights and the turns and the whatever, that's going to be beneficial to everybody involved on this phone call. And I mean, that's the truth. What can I say?
And just to echo that, so I mean, this is really the board's chance to make improvements to the existing conditions, which are not perfect, that I think we've all heard. And, your planner is on the call right now, and I'm sure he'd be happy to explain to you more. And we would be more than happy to discuss that condition where, we will do post-construction and operating monitoring, and what that looks like, and what are the ramifications if things don't work. If we want to get a more detailed discussion on the record, so we have a better understanding moving forward, I think that would be helpful to everyone here, in terms of what the board's looking for.
I think we're telling you, we're looking for a project that we can say, we're not going to have an issue that's going to tie up the traffic in the downtown, that's going to be efficient. And you're telling us it's going to be efficient. So we now have to weigh whether we believe it's going to happen that way. And we're relying on our planners, we're relying on our staff, and we're relying on ourselves from spending 10 months at least with our eyeball on this site, and really thinking about. I mean, when the meeting's over each month, it doesn't go away for us. It doesn't go away for you. We're constantly thinking about it, and trying to figure out, is it going to work? Okay. And Phil is saying, yeah, he thinks that the data that you provided, it works within the traffic study guidelines, whatever that institute that you guys, always refer to. Okay. What he's also saying to us all, that, yeah, it'll work if everything goes like clockwork. You don't have any margin of error. And that's what we have to weigh. We don't want to have to come back, in my mind, like Joe's saying, and say, okay, you guys have to tear out what you did. Brad, that's insane.
Correct.
Brad,
That's
what does that
absolutely
mean?
insane.
What does it mean
Mr. Chairman,
if it
there's one
doesn't
piece
work?
here that we're all going to the max number of cars. There's also an average number of cars that's 5 or 4. I mean, the true number that's going to be flowing through there is a smaller number. We're not anticipating that the full day stack is 10 cars. I mean, you can ask John and Phil, they know the data better than I and Pete. But what we saw is that the data was, and John, please, I'm grasping at straws here for the number for my P brain here is, but I remember 4 to 5 cars are the average. And so at peak times, you're going to get a little bit of an overflow. And so the basis or the bulk of the time is dealt with.
Okay, so we can talk about Saturday, okay? Peak time, Saturday, downtown Harrison, okay? The traffic's already backing up to get into that lot. Okay, now what you're providing to us and saying to us that you're going to help relieve some of that downtown traffic during peak hours because your people are going to come in and roll around. I'm
100%.
not sure about that. And one of the things I really wish we had, that's why we asked for at the first meeting, if we had an example that really fit this site, and you couldn't provide it. Okay. And I listen, that's why we're talking about stuff that you probably haven't had to deal with, Peter, in your whole history, your whole career with Dunkin' Donuts, with planning boards, because you were always able to provide, okay, go to the next town, go 2 towns over, and you can see what's going on and how we operate. This site, Brad, and you know what? You've been a landlord there for a long time, and you guys have done a great job in keeping this operation going. It's been terrific, but we don't even have a place where we can go and say, you guys are right. It's a confined site. They're using line busting techniques. It's not filling up to 10 cars. The people aren't making the left-hand turns. Then what are we? And we're saying, wow, okay, it works. It works.
You know,
Listen,
to add to that,
back,
we have
understand.
a dynamic situation. We have hundreds of new residents coming into downtown Harrison, 1 block away virtually. We don't know what's gonna happen to downtown, but this is ground zero. And when the averages work, that's fine. We're not worried. I'm not worried about the averages. I'm worrying about those moments where you do have a full line of cars and there's very little tolerance for people in downtown to be stuck in traffic. It's already intolerable, in my view. It's going to be, the risk that it's going to be much worse is extreme in my view.
Just anecdotally, we opened up a drive-through restaurant in Yonkers 6 or 7 months ago. The volume of business that goes through that store is 100% higher than the Harrison store. It has an 8-car stack. I have never, and again, I'm not there 24 hours a day, but I've never seen it back out onto the street.
Um,
And it's a
Matt?
total different setup over there. Central Avenue in Yonkers is not like downtown Harrison, so that's not a viable comp.
I'm simply talking about the efficiency of the operation. I'm not talking about a viable comp.
But it's more than
You
the
know-
efficiency of what you're not hearing. It's the location, it's the logistics. And as Tom
Listen,
said,
guys-
if there was a comp that we could use, it would help us. But unfortunately, there isn't.
I might suggest that the service road to the major Deegan Expressway is perhaps a more complicated comparable.
All right.
And guys, we're gonna have the same cars and people in town already. I mean, we're taking 10 cars. People are gonna drive. It's not our lot anyway. We have 8 spots now or 6 spots. So
Okay.
it's a shared lot. So people can
Let's-
park, people do park, and we always have that issue. People park in CVS, people go to the karate studio, people go to the bagel shop across the way that was there and whatever. And it's a shared lot now. So, we're proposing that we're gonna help with this by taking 10 cars out that are not gonna hunt in that back lot. Because to your point, Chip, and to everybody on the call is, we're gonna have, the Avalon Bay, a bunch of new people that are gonna live there. Some are gonna walk, some may drive. And it's an unknown number. We do understand, and you do understand, but that doesn't mean it's not going to exist anyway. And if anything, it's going to be worse if we don't take the cars out of the line and put them through our store. So I think that our efficiency here is actually a help to everybody that was involved in helping with the Avalon Bay project. I think that this is additive to the town. I mean, but that's just my opinion. But again, I go back to Phil and to John. It's the data. And I think that
Brad,
you got,
you're right, Brad. I mean,
anecdotal.
these folks are coming in Avalon regardless, and they'll be coming to Duncan. And we're increasing the capacity and the efficiency of the site by widening the driveways and providing a second means of access and implementing all of this technology to get people in and out quicker. So, I mean, ultimately, it will be a more efficient place and there'll be more room back there. I know it's still a challenging site, but we've worked hard at it with your consultants, and we've come up with backup plans and backup plans for the backup plans.
Yeah. We listen, we appreciate all that. We really do. Pat, what's
Yes,
your opinion on where we should go from here?
So I don't think you've heard anything this evening that's not information you've already received. So I think you have all the data you need to render a decision on this application. So I haven't heard any public comment on this, Mr. Chairman. The next step in the process would be to close the public hearing. And then the next step would be to determine your course of action with respect to the application that's pending before you. We can certainly draft resolutions for you that would incorporate these measures. We can work with the applicant with regard to things like the monitoring measures. We can prepare a pro or con resolution for you to consider both. It's entirely up to you how you want to move forward, but procedurally, it would require you to close the public hearing and then direct us to move with preparing documents for you to consider.
Okay, so how does the board feel about closing the public hearing or keeping it open for more information? What's your feeling?
I think we close the public hearing.
And just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, if you do close the public hearing, you have to render a decision within, I think, 62 days, Christian. Is that right? 62 days?
Okay,
So a clock starts ticking.
so why don't we have, let's have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion, Marshall.
Second. Chip seconds it. Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Okay. So that was a majority. Okay,
I
anybody,
counted at least 4, yes.
was there anybody that didn't want to close the public hearing? Okay. So then, and then we will direct you to prepare resolutions. Pro and con.
Very well, Mr. Chairman, will do.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the dialogue.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
time.
guys.
Likewise for all board members.
And happy holidays and
Holidays.
happy new year.
Yep.
Happy
Bye-bye.
holidays,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you for the time.
Kristen, are you up next?
I am. You get the pleasure of looking at me just a little while longer, so.
Okay.
And all right, so, Mr. Chairman, are you ready to begin the Yao matter for Buckout Road?
Of course. Yes.
Thank you. For the record, Kristen Motel, on behalf of the applicant here, which is the Yao's Family Limited Partnership, I'm joined tonight by Bill Kenny, our wetlands scientist, and Daniel Collins from Hudson Engineering, who is our site civil stormwater design engineers. We were last before you in October for the public hearing, at which time we received some comments from board members as well as public comments. There was a memorandum from Beth Evans and Woodward and Curran, which we filed a supplemental earlier this month responding to. I'll let Dan Collins walk you through a little bit of the amendments that were made in response to those comments, as well as Bill Kenny to summarize his further wetlands analysis. But just for the record, here what's being proposed on this 18.8 acre lot is a 12 lot cluster subdivision with 1 conservation lot. And the cluster subdivision previously received town board approval. We had submitted those resolutions through Hudson Engineering's materials in our December 7th submission. And I did see something in the Woodward and Curran memo today or yesterday that came out requesting the material. So I just wanted to remind the board that we already submitted that. And to the extent that there's other information about those approvals, which took place back in 2010, we've submitted a FOIL request. This is going back a few years ago now, and everything we found, we've turned over in our records. So I believe that the 12 lot cluster was previously approved, as we said, and all the information's been provided to the board. And as all the board members are aware here, the applicant has really taken careful consideration of comments. The whole project was really redesigned going back around 2019 now, and due to some delays because of COVID and fill sampling, this is a little drawn out, but we are here before you tonight and we're ready to take comments and questions. But first, like I said, I'm going to turn it over to Hudson Engineering. Dan, if you want to just walk through a few things, and then I think it would be helpful for Bill Kenny to walk through his analysis as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. Dan Collins, Hudson Engineering, engineers for the project. I'll just share my screen real quick. All right, everyone can see that, I'm assuming. So since our last meeting, the overall layout obviously remains pretty much close to the same as what was submitted originally. One of the main changes that we did make in regards to the layout was in regard to the maintenance access from Forest Lake Drive. The main access comes up in the same location. However, we've revised the grading in this area to minimize slope disturbance right next to the road. And we've also better followed the existing grade up to the maintenance access that's required to go around the management area. In the initial submission or the previous submission, we'd actually had it coming around the uphill side, which disturbed a lot more steep slopes. So we've modified this modified it to run along the opposite side to preserve that area. and pull the disturbance closer into the basin for what's necessary. Most of Water and Current's comments in the last round were very technical. I applaud them for getting into the details. So one of the main things that we did change, besides the access road, I'll flip to the stormwater plan. In regard to the stormwater design, we did add a 4-bay. What that does is it helps pre-treat the runoff from the pervious and impervious areas that run into the proposed swale behind lots 5, 6, 7. These lots, this would all discharge into a dammed up portion of the swale, which will actually allow some of the sediment to settle out before getting overflowing into the actual treatment swale, the planted treatment swale that will treat the remainder of the water quality. And that was required by DEC, and that was the Water and Current pointed out, and we've added that to our plans. There were also, in adding this in, we've also revised some of the calculation within the actual swale itself to provide a 4-inch perforated pipe underneath it to provide adequate filtration. In revising the calculations of the water quality swale, we've also revised the calculations within the basin. One of the issues was that there was not enough separation from ledge rock, so we ended up raising up the bottom of the infiltration basin 6 inches. So now we have the required 3 feet of separation. In raising this up and revising the swale, we also revised the outlet structure to better control the flows to better meet the requirements with the revised system. Additionally, we did provide an emergency overflow in the case that the storm fills up for storms beyond the 100-year storm. This is sized for the 100-year extreme storm event, which is also for the DEC, the 100-year extreme flood event. So this system is designed to control the storms up to the 100 and reduce the flows coming from the site as required by the DEC to reduce any additional runoff from the property and potentially reduce flooding downstream. See, the majority of the rest of the revisions were all technical, as well as clarifications in the SWIP and associated calculations that we've made. We've made some revisions in the SWIP as well. I won't get into the nuts and bolts of everything, but Water and Current has been reviewing that. We've been working with them to get that all ironed out. In addition to the consulting engineer's comments, Bill Kenny actually did go out and map the off-site DEC wetlands, and we've added that to this plan, as well as provided an additional plan. And obviously Bill will get into this in a moment, but I'll just show you that the extent of the 100-foot adjacent area only really clipped the, the southeast corner of the site. If I flip back to our stormwater plans, our limited disturbance, that's the dashed gray line. We're well beyond that. We're probably another 60 feet beyond that or so. And we're going to keep our limited disturbance on that lot away from the that adjacent area. The closest we get is within, obviously, Forest Lake Drive. But at that point, we're piping everything underneath the road. And it's already previously disturbed area that's outside of the buffer anyway. I guess I'll now turn it over to Bill Kenny, who can go forward with explaining the wetlands delineation and everything on site.
Dan, before you sign off,
Yep.
the comments you're referring to from Warren Curran, are you talking about the December 20th?
No, we did receive those. I was talking about the comments from November.
Okay.
The comments that we revised originally. Yes,
Yeah, 'cause
yeah.
we
We
just
did
got
receive the
these.
comments.
Yeah, I know, they just
Yes,
came in, so.
Yeah, we did receive those. I had a chance to go through them again. Very in-depth technical comments. We hadn't provided a lot of the engineering reports and such for the sewer and water because we weren't sure if there was going to be any layout changes. But since this is pretty set, we've put together all that for their request.
You'll get to those. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll hand it over to Bill Kenny so he can go over the wetlands.
Okay.
Good evening. Bill Kenny. I'm the principal of William Kenny Associates from Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm a professional wetland scientist, soil scientist, and landscape architect, and have a degree in environmental management from the Yale School of Forestry. We have done a couple things related to the property since late summer. In September, we went out to identify areas of offsite wetlands that are east of the property. And as Dan has explained, and then appeared before you at the last meeting. And since then, what we've done is we've gone back and worked with Dan to get the offsite wetland locations added to the project drawings so that the adjacent area can be shown as has been described. And then what we've also done is to review the entire property and determine if there are any wetlands on the property itself. We did conduct that review. That was done on December 6th. Have issued a letter regarding that wetland mapping review. It's dated December 6th, and we found that there's no wetlands on the site. And the low area, the existing low area that's being used for stormwater management, we specifically checked that area. I believe at the last meeting that we appeared before you, there was a neighbor that I think made some indications that that area might be a wetland or vernal pool. We did a close look at that and found no wetland in that area, no vernal pool, and in fact, no wetlands anywhere on the property. And then lastly, we did a review of the project overall with regard to potential impacts to wetlands and the wetlands that are offsite and the wetlands that are more than 100 feet from any of the proposed activities. And based on their distant locations and based on the proposed stormwater pollution prevention plan, which includes soil erosion and sediment control measures during construction and long-term stormwater management, best management practices to collect, treat, and detain stormwater runoff from the proposed impervious surfaces and buildings and roads. It's our opinion that the project will not adversely affect the wetlands that are off-site and more than 100 feet from proposed project activities.
Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Bill. At this time, I think we'd like to take any comments and questions from members of the public and the board, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Yes, why don't we, the public hearing is open. Do we need a motion to open it for this meeting, Pat, or we just?
No, it's already open. It's already open, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. Okay. Is there anybody here on the call that wants to talk about this application? Ro, do we know if anybody's registered?
Nobody.
Okay, fine. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, there was some, at least I'm confused. Kristen, you referred to a 2010 planning board resolution. Was there one subsequent to that with a lot count that's different?
Yes, I believe there was one from 2011 that specified the 12 lots, and the initial cluster approval was from 2010.
So staff seems to think there's one from 2014 that refers to 11.
So we requested any of those resolutions since our office did not represent the applicant at that time, and the only materials we received were the ones that we provided to the board.
From who? From the town?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
I mean, if there's another resolution, Ro, I think that you may have helped with that request a few years back, but if there's another resolution, we'd be happy to take a look at it. We're not aware of that though.
Yeah, there's, we're in current is also referring to a subdivision letter provided by McCullough, Goldberg, and Stout in 2014, about 11 lot conventional subdivision. So I get, what, maybe you can clear it up somehow so that we know what we're dealing with.
Sure, yeah, we'll clear it up. I think that may have been the applicant's former attorney, so I'm not sure that they would have been the ones to issue the resolution, but we'll work with the town again and
Okay.
figure out what's going on. Sure.
All right. Do we need Pat, there's a number of engineering, Woodward and Curran, and I think the town engineer had a couple of comments. In order to close the public hearing, we really need to get answers to those, do we not? And we need to know about the cluster 11 versus 12.
Obviously, the lot count's a question, Mr. Chairman, but yes, we would have to close those engineering issues prior to closing the public hearing on this.
Okay. So unless somebody else has any questions, why don't we let the public hearing remain open for the next meeting? Do we need a motion for that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you'd move.
I'll move. No
I'll
need.
second.
No need.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing remain
Aye.
open, January 25th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could at this time, aside from the engineering issues that are in the Woodward and Curran memo and the lot count, if there's anything else that the board members have concerns with, or that the town engineer has concerns with, we'd request that they be raised at this time so that we could adequately address them. The only concerns we're aware of are the ones in the Woodward and Curran memo and the lot count, as we just discussed.
I think, Christian, I think you would have heard those in the past two meetings. The board has spent a lot of time with this application over the years.
Right.
And I think we were satisfied when we got it down to whatever cluster that was that we got it down to. So I think you're really dealing with technical comments at this point.
And I think, Kristen, a direct contact between Dan and Mike Amadeo is appropriate. Mike can give you whatever final comments he has.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a happy holiday, everyone.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Happy holidays.
Yep, same to you. T-Mobile is next.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Frank Ferraro from Ferraro and Stamos here on behalf of the applicant T-Mobile Northeast LLC. Mr. Chairman, the application before you is for a special exception site plan review. T-Mobile currently has an FCC licensed telecommunication facility on top of the office building at 600 Monadnock Avenue in the SB1 Special Business Zone. In this application, T-Mobile is looking to upgrade that facility. Currently, they only have 3 panel antennas attached to the mechanical penthouse. They're looking to remove those antennas, replace them with 9 new antennas on roof-mounted ballast. The purpose of the upgrade is so that T-Mobile can provide better service to this area, introduce more of its licensed frequencies to this particular location. The application had the benefit of being vetted by the board's radio frequency consulting engineer, Ronald Grafe, who issued a letter on December 6, 2021, indicating his concurrence with the fact that this application is an eligible facility under federal regulations, and that the review should be limited only to RF emissions and structural aspects. We do have our professional engineer, Josh Cottrell, with us to review the plan briefly with you. I'd like to call him now unless there's any initial questions.
Frank, I think we're good with the plan, in all due
Okay.
respect to Joshua. Yeah.
Sure.
I think we can open the public hearing at this point. So a motion to
Sure.
open the public hearing.
Make the motion, Marshall.
I'll second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, public hearing is now open. Is anybody here on this call that wants to comment on the application before us? Anybody on the board have any questions or comments? Okay, let's have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion to close, Marshall.
I'll second.
Okay, all
No
in
need
favor?
second.
Public hearing is now closed. I think the order of business for us at this point is to grant special exception use. We need a
There were
motion for
two,
that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. There were 2 issues that Ron raised of concern. So the first was the emissions on the roof, not in the public area, are high. There needs to be notice of that. I think the applicant was recommending signage on the door. Ron suggested physical barriers as well around the sides of the antenna. So I think that's a fair recommendation. And he also wanted some additional details regarding wind loads of the antennas themselves. Both of those items could be carried as conditions of approval if you choose to move forward.
Okay, so let's have a motion with those included.
Two different motions, Mr. Chairman. You need to grant special exception use and site plan as well. This is a type 2 action under seeker, so no seeker
Well,
involved.
we were going to do that, but you interrupted me and you could have commented on the second one. Okay. Let's have a motion.
I'll
for
move the special
special
exception.
exception.
I'll move it. Joe.
Okay, second?
I'll
All in
second.
favor? Aye. Okay. Let's have a motion.
With
for site plan-
those conditions.
Condition.
Let's have a motion to grant site plan approval with those conditions.
I'll move it, Joe.
I'll second, Chip.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Good luck with the project.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays, everyone.
Same to you. Okay, next application is Colonial Arms. I will have to recuse myself. Joe, will you please handle this application?
Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, I have to recuse myself as well. I have to recuse myself as well, Joe.
Okay. You got it, bro?
Okay.
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
You still
Okay.
have a quorum, Mr. Joe, so you're good to go.
Great. So we're here for public hearing on this. So we have a motion to open a public hearing.
I'll move, Chip.
Second.
I'll second it, Noni.
Steve, do you want to speak to this? Is it
Sure.
you? Sure.
For the record, again, my name's Steve Rabel. I'm with the law firm of McCullough, Goldberger and Stout. With me tonight is George Vartholomeus from Chardulo Architecture. We're here on behalf of Colonial Arms LLC. They own 197 through 203 Harrison Avenue. So as we noted to you last month, this is actually an application for reapproval of site plan and special exception use. In 2017, this board granted those approvals for what is essentially the same development. So obviously you've opened the public hearing. If you'd like, we can present the plans for the benefit of the public and give an overview of what's being proposed and what's there now. But we did do that last month as well. So Mr. Stout, it's up to you if you'd like us to get into detail.
I don't think so unless there's someone here. Or did somebody specifically sign up for this public hearing? To speak and want to look at the plan?
Nobody did.
Okay, anybody on the board want to see the plans again? I think you did a good job last month on it. No, okay. So are there any comments from the public? Anybody that's here?
I mean, it just looks like essentially we're approving something that we looked at very carefully in the past, except for some minor cosmetic changes.
Correct, and the bedroom count stays the same, the
Right.
apartment count stays the same, it just some
Layout.
minor architectural.
You
improvements.
just got a comment. Somebody would like to speak.
Sure.
Danielle Covatillo, looks like.
Danielle, can you hear me?
Hold on, I'm gonna up her to a panelist, I think.
Thanks, man. Danielle, are you with us?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good, thank you. Hi, it's actually Danielle's husband, Keith Calavito. I live on 4 Meadow Street, just down the hill from the proposed Colonial Arms multifamily building. And I have a few questions. The area that I live in and my neighbors, unfortunately, some of my neighbors couldn't join the Zoom tonight. We live in an area that consistently floods, not just during a 20, 30, 50, or 100-year storm. We get consistent flooding outside of our street, outside of Purdy and Meadow and Park Avenues. So anytime there's any type of proposed change to land surface in this area. It's cause for concern. So based on the last planning board meeting on November 22nd, which a few of my neighbors and I sat in on, it was mentioned that Colonial Arms project will involve creating underground parking spaces. So considering the high water table in the area, I'd like to know if a water study has been conducted to determine what the water flow implications resulting from the construction and the completed building would be.
Okay. Steve or George, want to address that?
Sure. What I can tell you is that a full stormwater study was done as part of the original approvals, and a stormwater plan was put in place to ensure no increased rate of runoff. I venture to guess that's what was meant by a water study, but all stormwater requirements have been met and were reviewed by the town's engineer, Mike Amadeo.
Okay, so the water study, I just want to confirm the water study was done by the developer, correct?
Yeah, but it's verified by the town engineer.
Okay, I mean, I don't think it's unfair considering the flooding issue that we have, that, you know, to enlist an independent engineer or hydrologist to study some of the stormwater runoff implications. I mean, this is a severe problem that we face. And, you know, I know the town engineer has looked at it, but I don't think it's unfair considering what we have to deal with to enlist an independent engineer to inspect this.
Okay. You said you had a couple of questions?
Yeah, and then regarding the traffic, I mean, everyone knows we talked about this with Dunkin' Donuts and some other issues that came up tonight. I mean, all roads in the Harrison, basically, it's a one-lane road. So I assume there's a traffic study that's been conducted. And I'm just curious, how does the addition of this building impact some of the local traffic conditions?
Yeah, I don't know if a detailed traffic study was done. I believe the intention was to treat this more along the lines of transit-oriented, given the proximity to the Metro North station. But we can say that all parking has been accommodated off-site, and I believe the seeker findings indicated that they were comfortable with the anticipated levels of traffic.
And I'm just going back to the town board. Has the town done any type of traffic study based on this development?
Only with what was required through the environmental review.
Okay. And then the units, I guess there's 27 total parking spaces with 18 units. So who knows how many cars there would be? I mean, if it was, you know, double the amount of units, where would the additional cars park if not enough room in the because, you know, obviously in downtown Harrison, parking is a big issue. So where would the overflow cars park?
Well, overflow cars would park in the same places that overflow cars park currently with the existing residences. Again, my understanding is this was looked at in 2017. We meet the parking requirements under the zoning ordinance, and the board at the time felt comfortable with the zoning ordinance and the standards it provides.
Okay. I mean, I just asked the planning board. I mean, things are obviously a lot different than 2017. So what was true back then is not true today. So I think that should be taken into account. And then my last thing I just wanted to touch on real quick is it's a landscape plan. I mean, currently the view that, you know, if you're looking from, you know, Purdy, the bottom of Purdy and Park Avenue and Meadow Street, you know, right now you're looking at a wooded area. And, you know, myself, my neighbors are concerned that now there's going to be a giant 4-story building, you know, from this end of town that we're looking at. So right now there's a, you know, sort of a natural state, a wooded area that we look at. And so what is your landscape plan for that side of the building to sort of offset, you know, the height of the building?
So George, I don't know if you want to bring up, actually, just to be clear, before we get into the plans, Keith, I think it might be helpful just to get all the questions so we could go through them all at once rather than do the back and forth.
Yeah, that was my last question. And just tied into that, I would hope that there would be some type of money, put into an escrow account, just to account for, if when this sounds like this is approved, so it's going to happen. But, I would hope that money is going to be put aside into escrow in case when this is done, the look and feel from this side is not what you guys have put in your plans. And then also just to take into account, if something dies within a 3-year period, that money is available for potential replacement. So that's everything I have.
Okay, thank you. So George, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen, I think we can bring up the renderings of the project and the overall plan, which should show any landscaping. And if you wouldn't mind walking through just a couple of those visual details for the board.
You can see?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the front view from Harrison Avenue. This would be the main entrance at Colonial Place, the parking entry over here at Harrison Avenue. This is the existing condition. So there, it is already built on with houses. And this would be the proposed site plan. The backyard would be landscaped terrace. So on the parking garage goes under, but on the roof, essentially the roof of the garage would be landscaping. So we're adding landscaping back to the site. I believe on this direction is what you're talking about, the wooded area, which is not impacted by the building, but
Yeah, just to clarify that for Keith, I believe because our property is already fairly well developed, that the wooded area you're referring to is actually the town's property adjacent to our lot. So we wouldn't be developing on that site. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, George. Go ahead.
Yep, no, that's good. Okay, site plan. This is the site map. And if you want, we could walk you through the actual plans if that's something that's of interest, the plans of the building.
So I think it's more of the visual impact, not necessarily what the interior of the building is or the.
So these are the 3 renderings besides the front. This again looking from Harrison Avenue. The garage in the forefront. This is would be the backyard, the landscape terrace, and again, like kind of a bird's eye view of the landscape terrace, looking at it from Colonial Place. The material. Sorry.
Just quickly, George, in that top left photo or rendering, I should say, that green area to the back, would that be the town's property?
Yeah, these trees in the distance, that's the town's property. Here, the paved area with the plantings, that's the backyard. With the garage would be underneath. Yeah, the materials, the main changes we made are, the stone and cedar siding is trying to fit in local materials, larger windows. We tried to include sustainable measures into the project, insulation, windows. That's the presentation. Anything specific I could talk about, just let me know.
Thanks, George. And one other thing to note, just in terms of continued compliance, the landscaping is a part of the approved site plan. So to the extent that we're showing it in the site plan, it's required to be a part of the final development. So I know that was a bit of a concern as well.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, and we're landscaping around the front too. The whole building is set back, so that it's going to be, there would be all these gray areas would be landscaping around the base.
So George, that site map on the left there, that wooded area, there. That's essentially to remain, most of that, right? Or all of that.
I'm sorry.
Where,
this-
can you zoom in to that a little bit? Show where the house on the closer to the Mamaroneck side is? So that little, so go to your right a little bit more. So where your arrow is now, that's the, I don't know which direction that is. Somehow, is that the southern side of the property?
Sorry, yeah, this is that wooded area.
Yeah, is that, so the Cabot Club in that parking lot, the Emilio's parking lot, is that the property line that basically comes straight down from where those cars are on the other side? On the other side? Yeah, right there.
Yeah, basically, this is the property line. It comes here and then
Goes
down.
down. All right, so Steve, your point, to your point, that is town property. That's not part of your parcel.
That's correct. The property line, I think it more or less lines up with the driveway adjacent to that wooded area. And so unless the town has other plans,
No, but that's not part of your proposal. Okay,
That's exactly right.
okay, and then.
I'm sorry, is that where the cemetery is currently located?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Closer to the parking lot
Oh, okay, thank you.
is where the cemetery is. And then can you go, just again, to clarify, because obviously flooding is a major issue downtown. That in the studies that were done as part of the secret review in 2017 meet the 2021 flooding regulations?
To the best of my knowledge.
Stormwater regulations, I'm sorry, not flooding.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, I believe they do. We would have to check with an engineer. And we're certainly happy to check on that for you.
Okay, so I would make that, if it's the board's pleasure, if we move this forward, that we make that a condition of any approvals. Anybody else on the board or anybody else in the public have any comments?
And just a question, the little house on the hill next to the vacant land, that house comes out, correct?
The existing, you're talking about Marshall, right?
Yeah, the existing house. There's two multifamilies, and then there's a third structure, right?
Correct,
Small
yes.
house.
Yes.
That comes
that's
out.
correct.
And that's in the trees, right, over there?
Let me go to the.
You got to zoom in, I think.
Yeah, so these three houses, yes, would be. This is I think this is the house you're talking about. It's sort of set back.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's that line to the right is the property line.
Yes, this is the
Right.
property.
So the new structure comes right to the property line, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's taking out more or less half of the green area there in front of the third house. And the cemetery to the right of that.
Yes, this green area would be part of the building. And that would.
Right, okay. Got it.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, so motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move. No, I'll second Noni.
Okay, Chip, then Noni. All's in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Good, 4? Yeah, okay. So Pat. We do.
So again, this is essentially the same project you have approved. Should you choose to move to reapprove tonight, we would, as conditions of the approval, verify the stormwater management plan remains updated and correct, that there is the appropriate performance bond posted to ensure all the improvements are installed per the town code. And we would also have to re-adopt the environmental approvals that were done in 2017. So all the issues related to traffic and flooding would have to be assessed in that negative declaration that would be brought back, adopted by your board.
Okay.
I'll make the motion on that basis.
This
I'll
is to
second.
adopt this, the secret negative declaration with those
Yep.
conditions. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we need a separate motion.
I'll make a motion that we grant site plan approval along with the three areas of concern there. That's the engineering, the environmental, and any other, what was the other that we needed?
The performance
Engineering.
bond.
Bonding.
Yes,
yeah.
insurance bond. Thank you.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And Joe, you need one more, which is the special exception use.
It wasn't on your note there, Mr. Clary.
Sorry about that.
We need a motion for special exemption.
I'll make the
special
motion.
exemption. Thank you. Second.
Again,
Second.
along with it, special exception would also have those
All the
contingencies.
same, all the same conditions.
Same
Okay.
conditions, yes.
Okay.
So
all
do we
those
have
in
a
favor?
second?
Yeah, you did, or Marshall did. Marshall was yes, Noni second. All those in
I
favor?
second that.
Thank
Aye.
you. Okay,
Okay.
good luck with the project.
Thank you very much.
Okay, 8286 Halsted Avenue.
Good evening, Chair, Board. This is Dennis Drogan. I'm going to represent Property 82 LLC.
Okay.
We've gone to zoning and they've gave us our blessing on the variance for the 1 parking space or the 11 parking spaces and sent you back to you for the final review and say, sign off for the 1 legalization of a pre-existing apartment for over 30 years.
Okay. We're here for a public hearing, are we not?
Yes, you are, Mr. Chairman.
It's not a continuation, this is the public hearing.
New public hearing.
Right, so let's have a motion to open the public hearing. So, okay,
Make the
Kimberly
motion.
make the motion, Marshall seconded it, Jeffrey thirded it. Okay. So Noni was 4, coming a little late. So we're, public hearing is now open. Do we have anybody here on the call that wants to comment? Anybody on the board have any comments or concerns? Okay, if not, let's have a motion to close the public hearing.
Make the
I'll
motion.
move, Chip.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, public hearing is now closed. We have not received the ZBA resolution. I do not think, have we, Pat?
You have not. They have not adopted findings, but you could grant conditional approval subject to that. If they don't, they've indicated they're approving the resolution as you heard earlier. So I think it's just a formality of getting the findings.
Okay, so let's have grants conditional site plan approval. So a motion for that effect.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
project is approved. Good luck.
Chair, Board, thank you, and happy to have the record for this evening. Take it easy, enjoy the holiday.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay. Next item is the 111 Calvert Street.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Planning Board. Andrew Spatz on behalf of the property owner, Andre Monte Santo, and Sanjay Majad is also present, architect. Chair, my only exception of being number 7 when it's virtual is that I have 2 desserts. Not good. I'm gonna have to work on that. But in any event, now I'm all energized. If we recall, we were addressing a site plan approval back in March 28th, 2017. Item number 15 indicated that my client wasn't able to have a permanent dumpster in the alley. The proposal is now for a 2-yard dumpster and a placement of a 5-foot enclosure gate. If the planning board recalls, this is in a PB zoning district. Currently, there is ample screening and landscaping between the building alley area and the adjacent Briga Lane, where there are several residential units. Most recently, a meeting was held with the Harrison Engineer Department to address the memo dated November 22nd with regards to the flood hazard information and flood anchoring, which was proposed. Those were the 2 remaining items. I'm hoping that we can address that this evening and move forward with this.
Well, I think you're gonna have to address it with them, the engineering department, correct?
Well, we did.
Oh, okay, fine. So,
I mean,
so
meaning-
Andrew, why don't we do this? Why don't we have a motion for a public hearing? Because that's your next step in the process.
Perfect.
Okay. Can we have a motion, please?
Make the motion.
Okay, second? Okay, Joe, all right, all in favor? Ro, that's for January 25th, is it? January 25th.
You're on mute, bro.
Sorry. Yes, it would be to schedule the public hearing for January 25th.
Okay. Now, Andrew, just to make a note, we got a report from the engineering department on this application, and there are a couple items on there. I don't know if they're duplicates from before, but you probably should reach out to the town engineer just to clear those up.
I believe Sanjid did. If we're referring to the 2 questions, that's one.
Well, we just got a report dated today. Okay, so he probably reviewed what you submitted, and then there's a couple of questions, but we're gonna go to the public hearing stage. You've got a month to deal with him on that, and hopefully it's a moot point for your application.
Wonderful, Chair. May I just inquire, are there any items that the fine members of planning board would like us to address in advance? So come the 25th, all goes well with the public hearing component, we would be able to move forward. I just want to flush any concerns, anything that Sanjid or Andre could work on between now and the 25th of January. I just want to be as diligent as possible.
Yeah, if you could somehow provide us with some way to prevent the next 500-year storm, then everything will be mute.
Chair, we're working on that. Hydraulics, the village of Mamaroneck, we're working on that too here, believe me.
There you go. That's why you're in that big building in Mamaroneck, right? Yeah, working on stuff. All right.
Yeah, well, listen, Chair, I still have water in my ear from the last one, from 13 feet. Believe me, I hear you. But yes, as long as no one else has any other concerns that we could address this evening, that's good, and we'll take it to the 25th of January.
And in the public hearing, we never know what comes up in that. So, so we'll see you January 25th. Okay.
Andre, Sanjay, any questions for the committee, for the board?
I'm good. I'll reach out to the engineering department tomorrow and see what the comments for today were.
Right, and
good.
Great.
Good.
Chair, members of the planning board, have a great holiday. Happy New Year. And we look
Same
forward
to you. Thank you, fellas.
Best.
Happy holidays.
All right.
Now I'm off to my 3rd dessert. Thank you,
Yes.
folks.
Okay.
Better that than drinks.
Harris resident, 100-foot buffer.
Hello again. For the record, Stephen Rabel with McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout.
They don't pay you enough.
So we were recently retained by John and Grace Harris, who own 2 Beverly Road. And I'm sure you recall they were before you a few months back for a fence that has been erected on their property already. At the time of the installation, the Harrises, who bought the property last year, were not aware of the special 100-foot setback requirement for Purchase Street. And what I'd like to do is just share my screen quickly so we can all look at the property together.
Obviously, they weren't represented by McCullough, Goldberg, and Stout for their closing.
Clearly not. So as you can see, the property has frontage on both Beverly Road and Purchase Street. And Purchase Street, as we all now know, is subject to the special 100-foot setback requirement. Though, as you can see, the house itself, which was built in 1770, is actually quite close to Purchase Street already. In fact, I think it's 25 feet or less at its closest point. And then even closer to the street is the existing driveway. So the Harrises had installed this fence with the intention of providing some safety for their child, as well as their dog, frankly, because their yard is quite close to a state highway, and to provide some additional privacy for their home and some security for themselves. As I understand, there's been a rash of, unfortunately, some break-ins in the neighborhood. But clearly the fence does not comply with the zoning ordinance, which is why we're here now. And before we get into a fully designed plan, our hope was to have a more informal discussion with the board. The Harrises have begun discussions with a landscape professional to work on revised plans for the fence. The intention is to move the fence about 6 feet so that it's behind these mature trees, to change the color of the fence to a dark muted green so that it blends in more with the natural plantings, and to supplement the existing landscaping to fill in these gaps. You can see that some of the mature trees came down over the summer due to the intense storms, and to better screen it. We think this will fit in much better with the neighborhood. I think it is worth noting that the most impacted neighbor for the fence along this property line would be Manhattanville College. You can see their parking lot is here with some significant screening. And we think this would represent a significant improvement over the fence that's there now. But before we got into a fully fleshed out plan, I know there was a significant amount of discussion at the last meeting they appeared at, and we wanted to make sure that, you know, we're barking up the right tree. So I guess if you have questions for me, or if there's any additional issues or options you'd like us to look into further, we'd like to have that discussion with you.
Okay, I'd like to see the landscaping plan.
Absolutely. So, and again, it has not yet been developed. They are in discussions with a landscape professional. It's being worked on. But if we came here tonight and you said, we think everything you've described is not at all what we're looking for, it gave us the flexibility to work with them a little bit more.
Okay, so I don't know what the rest of the board, and they'll weigh in a second, but my feeling is that the fence flies in the face of what the purchase 100-foot buffer is all about. That being said, you know, I'll like to see, you know, a rendering of what your plan idea is. My feeling is that, be straightforward about it, fence goes, and you come back with plant the area, and if it's for protection purposes, if you want to run in between those plants with a 4-foot chain link fence of some sort to protect, you know, for security, black, you know, green, something that blends in. I think that flies better than what you're proposing, but, you know, I'm open to see, you know, what you're proposing.
I agree. It's that monolithic, whether it's green or white, it just creates a wall.
Well, I think seeing some landscaping would be a good idea. I think the Harrises, I appreciate, Steve, your approach here and coming to feel us out first. I think that's terrific of them. I want to make the point that Manhattanville really isn't the issue in terms of their being impacted. It's the flavor for everyone driving along Purchase Street. It's the maintenance of an overall effect along Purchase Street. But I think their argument that the house is so close to the road and for safety, personally, I do understand that. And personally, I appreciate the idea of their willingness to change the color of the wall to move it 6 feet and to provide more landscaping. And that said, I do believe Tom is correct that we need to see the plan. So I think you're overall doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah, I agree with Noni. I drove down there the other day and actually this problem gets exacerbated by the fact that Manhattan's built on one side with a wall and then there's a white billboard on this side. So it creates like a tunnel effect. I also don't know the feasibility of painting that fence because of what it's made of. It's not wood. So I think in a couple of years, the green paint's gonna peel off. So that's an issue that I would have also. I agree with Tom, if you planted some arborvitae or some other vegetation and could hide the fence, but I still don't know that this fence works.
Can I make one other fun point that is not particularly helpful, but I do really appreciate how much the Harrises feel for their safety in this situation and are very much hoping to find some kind of compromise with us. I'm not really sure a petition, getting all these signatures to support them. I really want to make it clear for the record, the petition isn't, we all support them. It's about the way that the code is written and about the history of the road. Supporting them and their interest in having a fence is a very supportable thing. That's not the issue here. So to my mind, the petitions really don't address the issue. And I'm saying that for the record. I don't think it needs to be said necessarily, but I still do want to say that.
And I'd like to add, in my view, the idea of something like a chain link fence would give security, and then add to that either hedging or other landscaping that's evergreen would probably, in front of it, would probably accomplish a number of the objectives that we've been talking about.
All right, Steve?
Okay, and we're optimistic and we're hopeful that we'll be able to come back to you with something that addresses your concerns, be it the vinyl fence with the landscaping or another option, depending on what we decide internally. But we appreciate the comments and we look forward to continuing the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holiday.
I'll be back.
Oh, you're back?
No, that's right.
right.
They definitely don't pay you enough.
Next item is Summerhill, Kempner subdivision.
Good evening, all. My name's Patrick O'Sullivan. I'm an attorney with the White Plains Law Firm of Keenan Bean. I'm here with engineer Zach Pearson of Insight Engineering, representing Summerhill Realty LLC on Summerhill's sketch subdivision application. I'll turn this over to Zach to talk a little bit about the subdivision application.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Good to see you all again. Permission to share my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, we're here before this evening for an application for sketch subdivision for Summerhill Realty LLC. Currently, the applicant owns, there are 3 tax parcels totaling just over 51 acres off of Kempner Lane with access to Purchase Street, kind of up near the northern end of town. The application before you is a sketch subdivision for essentially carving, just so everybody's aware, there are 2 existing dwellings on the property. There's a smaller parcel here currently, that's a 3-acre parcel with an existing house on it. And then there's a larger house in the back, which is on a 46-acre piece of parcel, which actually goes across 684 here. The subdivision application before you is essentially for recarving up the lots to provide 2 smaller lots, code conforming, that go with the existing dwellings. And then obviously a 3rd lot gets created, and we know we have to show you the planning board a code conforming lot with a house on it and a septic. But, the intention is, this is an existing house here, The applicant is looking to, sell these lots. And, currently, the larger house in the back is on a 46 acre parcel. And, marketability wise, there's just not a market for a 46 acre piece of property with a house on it. And we're trying to get that to a much smaller code conforming lot.
Okay. Have you reached out to the Zach, to the town engineering department? Because you have not?
No.
Okay, I think that that's one of your next steps that you should do. They have a couple of questions. Did you meet with planning department pre-submission meeting?
Yeah, Pat and I had a few calls prior to submission. Yep.
That's good. That's good. Okay. Now I think staff, planning and engineering have some questions now that they've started to look at the plan. So if you, for our next stage here, is if you could discuss it further with them, see what their concerns are. If the lots are conforming and there aren't any issues, then the board doesn't have any site plan issues at the present moment. I think you're really dealing with technical stuff.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the existing house, just to be clear, the existing house here on lot 1 is, is inside of the side yard setback of the existing lot line.
Okay.
So, there are, it's a pre-existing non-conforming condition. So I did want to bring that to your attention, but, as far as lot width, the remaining setbacks, those will all be maintained. This house exists, this property boundary here exists. So there's no, we're not moving this property line. So that is an existing nonconformity.
So would that then involve a variance?
It would not, Mr. Chairman. That's a legally pre-existing non-conforming condition.
That's
and
fine.
It's not
Good.
being changed.
That's good for you. You can skip that that meeting or how many meetings, I don't know. Well, it may not be good for you. Maybe better for you. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm not going to get involved.
Mr. Chairman, just to point out, the issue really is not so much zoning compliance. It is what is the potential disposition of the large lot that's being created. So it's a very unusual lot. It's bisected by 684. It has frontage on Lake Street on the other side of 684. It would be the same lot. It has lots of environmental constraints. So it is very likely it's not further developable, but the objective here is to ensure that we're not creating a difficult condition by this reconfiguration. So Zach can work with us. We can go through those issues and learn a little bit more about the property.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
Okay, so we'll reach out to Pat. I'll reach out to Mike, and we'll get the comments and get back before you guys.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Happy
it.
holidays to you all.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Next item on the agenda is Blaine residence.
All right, this is the last time, I promise.
Oh, there he is.
Stephen Rabel, McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout, and we were retained by Josh and Nancy Blaine, who own and reside at 12 Cottage Avenue. They are proposing to install a sport court in their yard, which is also within the required special 100-foot setback. So again, I will share my screen.
Yeah.
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Before I get started, I should note that I'm also joined by Mike Finan from Langen Engineering in case there's any design questions. But really, we're here for a special buffer encroachment review and approval from the planning board. As you can see, Cottage Avenue runs along two sides of the property. And while the 100-foot setback has been met from this side, the easterly side, the southerly property line includes a sport court that's proposed to be 50 feet from the roadway. I'm just going to scroll down now to show you the existing aerial with the sport court overlaid. As you can see, this is a heavily wooded and screened property line, as is the westerly property line abutting the neighbor. So we took some photos, which were submitted to you, showing along Cottage Avenue. There's a 4-foot tall wooden fence, fairly tall, mature evergreens. I believe those are 14 to 16-foot Norwegian pine interspersed with 12-foot tall rhododendra. And the plantings also go along the western property line as well. We don't believe the court is going to be significantly visible, if at all, from Cottage Avenue, but we're here tonight if the board has any comments or questions or wants us to look at anything in greater detail. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay.
Steve, I'm trying to figure out, you say you're within the 100-foot buffer of Purchase Street. Am I missing something? Is there a drawing that describes? Okay, so there's Purchase Street on the left there, or is that Cottage?
It's the Purchase buffer, but it's applicable to Cottage Avenue as well.
Ah,
So this is
Right.
the
Right,
100-foot setback.
okay, right. No, I get that now. And where is the 100? Where is the actual 100 feet? Is it on the far side of the pickleball, that dotted line?
It's this line here. If I go up to the drawing, it may be a little more clear.
So that's
100
fairly
feet.
significant. It looks like 75% is encroaching. That's a fairly large encroachment. You know, 75% of the pickleball court is in fact encroaching in the buffer. It's not just like a couple of feet of it, of the court.
Right, it comes to the 50-foot mark.
Right.
So, and I'm sorry, Noni, did I cut you off?
No, not at all.
And what I would note is, the issue we think is most relevant is really the visual character. And you're looking at that short end coming from Cottage Avenue. So whether it's this wide of a court and it ends here, or whether it goes all the way back beyond the 100 feet, what you're looking at isn't necessarily going to change, which is why we felt that the screening was likely going to be the key component here of the review. Our feeling is that you're not necessarily going to see much, if anything, given the fence blocking through any understory and the significant evergreens. But certainly if there's areas that the board feel need to be supplemented, that's something we could look at.
I just have a question, Steve. If it's in the, how'd the fence get there? Photo 2.
Yeah, I'm
I mean,
sorry, what about photo 2?
Is there a fence there? If it's within the 100-foot buffer zone?
So my understanding is that the fence the clients had initially put in did have to be taken out, and that they put a new fence in pursuant to the building department's instructions.
Right, I feel like we've looked at a fence or two along Beverly that didn't comply. I don't know if this was one of the properties. The question is, when we kind of look at pools and wetland buffers, we always ask, is there an alternative location that would get around the encroachment?
Sure. And that is something that we considered. You'll see here, there's actually a water easement that runs through the rear yard of the property. And so the considerations that we took into account were, to what extent can we respect the buffer to the greatest extent practicable? And to what extent can we avoid impacts to the neighbors while also not, violating the terms of an easement agreement? So there's not too many locations on the property that work all that well if you want to be zoning compliant, but not near your neighbor's house. So as you get farther this way, you're either going to have to shift further over to avoid the easement area, and then you get into the existing retaining walls, which, Mike can probably speak better to the logistics than I can, but it increases grading and site disturbance. It also brings it closer to, as you get farther up, closer to the adjoining house and their view. Similarly, if you were to go to the northern end of the property, you're now getting closer to this home, which even if it's zoning compliant, may not be as nice for the neighbors. So
Steve,
I
I have
yes,
a question. I'm sorry. I have a question. What is that rectangular structure in the back corner? To the left.
to the left.
To the left.
Sorry. Yeah. I think that I believe we're looking at this here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think was a playscape and a trampoline. I think now it's being used for a little bit of mulch storage temporarily. The trampoline might still be there.
So let's just think this through. If you have a pickleball court that you're putting into a buffer, which is not allowed. You have a trampoline area that's not being used anymore. Why? And you have a water easement. What's the problem with? Are you allowed to have this kind of a court on top of a water easement in that back corner? Would that be an issue, or maybe you can avoid being on the water easement?
Yeah, I'm not even sure it would be on the water easement if you put it up in that corner.
Yeah.
So that
Steve,
would also.
have you reviewed the easement? This is nothing, the pickleball court's no different than a driveway. Lots of driveways exist on top of easements. So I don't know, have you reviewed the easement? Does it prohibit something being located on top of it?
We're still trying to track it down. You'll note in the survey, there isn't a Librarian page number.
Okay.
So we're still trying to track down those details. But I think.
Ordinarily, Mr. Chairman, ordinarily, and Steve can speak to this better than I, but ordinarily an easement might prevent structures, but it does not prevent oftentimes driveways and things like that. And I think a pickleball court is comparable to a driveway. So while, I think to me, the grassy area behind the pool, not quite where the trampoline, but in the backyard is an area that's outside of the 100-foot buffer and apparently in an area that might be high and dry and level. And if they're not prohibited by virtue of the easement, that might be an alternative location to consider.
Yeah, I agree, Pat. I think to Noni's point, let's try to get it out of the 100-foot, purchase buffer. So, see what you can do about that alternative, and let us know.
Yeah, I think just to flesh this out a little bit, even if we do avoid, or even if we are permitted to build over the easement area, you're still getting closer to the neighboring home. And I don't know, given the retaining walls and the pool, if you can meet the required rear yard setback. Even if you can, again, it's closer to the house. I think our question and thought, is the board's concern the visual impact to the buffer? Is it simply the existence of any structure within the buffer? And I don't mean it to be argumentative so much as we want to understand what the concern is so we can make sure that we're mitigating.
Both.
Okay. Is there
we wouldn't, Steve, the thing too here is going back to the, I don't think it's a really a perfectly apt comparison, but we've seen so many situations with, again, the wetland buffers where it just becomes kind of a slippery slope. This is something that has worked in our town, in our town ordinances, if you will. It's kept purchase. It's been respected for the most part. This buffer actually has really, really been respected, and I'll leave it at that.
So I guess, and I hear where you're coming from. My question just because I want to take this to the logical conclusion, make sure I'm advising the clients properly. You know, if we supplement the landscaping, which is already quite significant, and if you can't see it, and if it's a typical accessory use to a single family home and it doesn't make much noise, what is the impact other than the abstract knowledge that it's there that we're seeking to mitigate?
Well, listen,
and again, it's just, we want to be able to address your concerns as best as we can.
Steve,
So if
from
you
our
wanna do that-
perspective, we're looking at an incredibly beautiful piece of land with a beautiful home on it and a whole lot of lawn to work with here, okay? So, you know, what we're trying to tell you is look at this creatively. There seem to be a lot of other options for this particular applicant.
And I don't think the noise thing can't be a major concern, because you had kids over on a trampoline yelling and screaming, jumping up and down in that corner. You got a pool with probably all kinds of stuff going on there. So I'm sure they're concerned about it, but they're also have already dealt with, you know, outdoor activities back in the backyard that I'm sure they can keep it to a minimum.
Okay.
All righty.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You've given us a lot to consider. And we'll be back to you with hopefully some answers. As this is now my last application, I hope you all have a very happy and healthy holiday.
Okay, happy holidays to you.
You
and
too,
Mike.
Steve.
Thank
Hey,
you,
Mike.
Steve. Thank you so much.
Take care.
190 Gainsborough Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, George Martorella.
What did you take off to get the last item on the agenda?
I'm here tonight to review the sketch plan and CEQA on this application. This property is located in West Harrison at 190 Gainsborough. As you can see on the site plan, the photo, this property is occupied by a two-family house, which will be demolished for this construction of two new duplex houses. We're proposing a typical two-lot subdivision of 100 by 100-foot parcel in the B zone, no flood zone, no steep slopes. This property could be developed with these two homes, new homes, with very little changes to the existing grading. Main concern here is with all of these is the loss of parking. Right now, there is only one area, as you can see on the photo. There's a lot of driveways that already exist here. And there's one area in front of the existing house by the pole of about 44 feet of curbing. You can get two cars in there easily. It might squeeze three if they're compacts. But after the development, that area will be cut down to 30 feet. Probably only one legal spot, but again, if you have two compacts, you'll get two spots. Essentially going to lose one, I think you're going to lose one spot on this development. That's pretty much all I have to say on this one. It's a typical two-lot in a B zone.
So it's fully conforming, George, right? Pat, you've confirmed that?
Yes, well,
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, fully zoning compliant.
Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions or concerns?
No,
So,
I
Mr.
appreciate
Chairman,
George being very, I appreciate the very straightforward nature of the loss of that one parking spot, George. Thank you. But it looks, you know, it looks very conforming. I mean, it looks very, we've seen, you know, a lot of these. It looks Looks like, no major steep slope or anything on the property to deal with or anything like that, right?
No,
No,
it's just
no,
that one big
pitched driveway.
house.
right. No steep driveway or anything like that.
So, Mr. Chairman, in order to expedite moving this along, there's some details that need to be supplied, some additional utility information, drainage information. If George can work with Mike with respect to that, I think the plan can be brought back to you and we can move to public hearing and final approval. But those revisions should be done at this time so we can, when it's ready to go, we can actually approve it.
George, you go with that? Too bad if you're not. You got no choice.
So we're asking for a more involved sketch plan, is that it?
Exactly
Yeah.
right. Naomi.
Great,
Yep.
perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Merry Christmas. Get back
Happy
to work.
holidays to everybody.
Thank you,
Happy
George.
New Year.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays, George.
All
Take
right.
care.
Hey, George. Do we have anything that we need to discuss, Pat?
I have a question.
Okay, can
So-
we,
Can we adjourn the meeting though?
Wait,
No.
can we need to turn the recording off?
Well, we adjourn
yes.
first
And
and
Mo-
then turn the recording off,
Come
maybe?
on, yeah,
Yes, you can
adjourn the
I'll
meeting.
make a motion, to close the meeting.
Second.
Uh,
Second.
A second.
Or
all in
fifth.
favor? Kimberly's gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Okay.
might have dropped
Me-
off. Bill, can you? stop
Recording
the
is,
recording?
I'm stopping the recording now.